Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. It is Canelo Crawford fight week. You guys excited? How you feeling about this one? I'm going to give you my breakdown and prediction, how I see the fight playing out. And also, we'll discuss your predictions and your breakdowns, as well as some of the members of the boxing community, the likes of Teddy Atlas, Duke McKenzie, and various others, who they're picking to win this fight and why. But before we get into all that, I want to big up everybody in the live chat. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. We got Dominic, Debiaka, Mark Hatch, Muhammad Ali, Andrew, Jelly Mold, Black Super, Lucas, JR, Taylor Blair, D, Philip Ansar, Mark Odell, Big Ferg, Matthew Wilson, Lucas Ortega, Gary, KB, D Gibbs. All right, apparently the audio's good, loud and clear. Stenciano, big up. Jonas. What's happening, Shay? JR says 5 out of 10 excited, to be honest. Doesn't seem as big as it should be, but still going to watch. And here's the thing. I agree that this fight is lacking when it comes to anticipation, at least among hardcore boxing fans, and at least in the Anglo-sphere. I don't know what it's like in the Spanish-speaking world. Perhaps there's a lot more excitement there. But in the Anglo-sphere, it's kind of dead, the energy for this one. But the thing is, sometimes when you're not expecting much, it can turn out to be an absolute barn burner or a shocking result that tips the boxing world upside down. Will we get that here with Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford? We shall discuss today. Shout out to Johan, or Johan, however you pronounce that. T, all good Hatman, big up from Estonia. Big up the Estonia crew. Oh, wow. Debiaka's in Mexico, and he says, nah, it's not hyped here in Mexico either. Damn. Maybe it's the calm before the storm. Let's hope so. So, before I give you my take on this fight, and I've done this on previous streams, so I think I know roughly what the show of hands is going to be, but can we get a show of hands to see who you guys think is going to win this fight? Will it be Canelo or Terence Crawford? Just type the name of the fighter and the method of victory into the live chat so I can get an idea about how you guys are feeling about this one. Rastafari Exactamundo, big up. Canelo or Crawford, and just type the result after their name. Who's going to win this fight? Jonas says Crawford points. Hyro says Canelo can't be beaten on the cards. Kyle says Canelo via Amir Khan style knockout. Wow. Mark Hatch says Canelo stoppage. Infiniverse says Terence Crawford points. Debiaka's got Crawford split decision. Exactamundo, Canelo points. Earth Summed Up, Canelo points or late stoppage. Danny Canelo by knockout in under 10.5 rounds. Damn it says Canelo close UD. Shiv says Canelo decision. East Midlands Fight Fan, Crawford points. Tony Smart says Bud late stoppage. That's a big call. There's somebody else picking Bud by late stoppage as well. Is it Nuru Duran, excuse me. Canelo by robbery, he says. Adrian has got Crawford on points. Hussein says Canelo points. Philip is leaning towards Canelo on points. Dari says it's going to be a draw. Both guys surprise each other in a close fight. Okay, Isaac has got Canelo late stoppage. Stenciano's got Canelo via robbery. Triple B, Canelo majority decision. Matthew Wilson, Canelo KO. Sanjay's got Canelo by decision. Okay, Johan. Pick up Johan. He says Bud will do a number on Canelo, like 8-4 on the scorecards. Okay. Simon Jones has got Canelo. All right, so I want to say it might be 60-40, 65-35 in the live chat as far as who people think is going to win this fight in favor of Canelo. 60-40, 65-35. That's my estimate based upon what I'm seeing here. Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, never been as excited for a fight. Can't wait. And I hope we get an exciting spectacle between the two. I'm actually looking forward to a couple of the fights on the undercard as well. Stenciano says, Bud will piece this man up in Southpaw. All right. So let me give you guys my take on this fight. How I see it playing out. So, if these guys were naturally the same size, I'm not talking about height and reach. I'm talking about body mass, natural weight. If these guys were naturally the same size, I would not hesitate to pick Terence Crawford to win. Wouldn't even think about it for more than 5 seconds, to be honest. I think Terence Crawford is by far the more skillful fighter. Not that he's got every single skill that Canelo has, or he's better at every single thing than Canelo is. No, Canelo's got certain things that, for my money, he does better than Terence Crawford. But overall, I think Crawford is the more skillful fighter by quite some way. So again, to reiterate, if they were the same size, as in body mass naturally, I'd be picking Terence Crawford all the way. But they're not. Never mind what people say about how big Crawford looks now. He's piled on the muscle. I've seen some people claim that these two guys are naturally the same size, which is absurd. If you're saying that these two guys are naturally the same size, then that means that you're saying that Canelo could still make 154 or 147 comfortably and not be drained and still be able to perform. Totally ridiculous, right? These guys are not naturally the same size. Canelo Alvarez is much bigger than Terence Crawford naturally. Much bigger. Never mind the fact that Canelo fought in the lighter weights when he was at an earlier stage of his career. He turned pro at 15. Of course he's going to be fighting at the lighter weights when he turned pro at 15. Right? As a fully grown man, he's always been at least a middleweight. That period where he was fighting at 154 was really some joke business. He was fighting at, well, I know he was fighting below 154, but that period when he became a world champion, it was at 154. It was some joke business. They had to invent a new weight class for him. You guys remember that? Because he was avoiding Gennady Golovkin for a while. Anyway, there's a big size disparity in terms of natural body mass, probably bone density, muscle mass, so on and so forth. Furthermore, it's not just about the fact that Canelo is naturally bigger, stronger, and so on. It's also the fact that he's used to getting hit by bigger, stronger men than Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is not used to getting hit by people as big or strong as Canelo Alvarez. He's not. And no matter how skilled you are as a professional fighter, there comes a point when moving up in weight where you basically hit the wall, where your skills and perhaps superior speed can no longer compensate for your lack of natural size and power and strength. There's a limit, right? Terence Crawford seemed to be very close to that limit when he fought Israel Madrimov. Now, I've said this before in previous videos. Israel Madrimov is not as big or strong as Canelo Alvarez, but he does things that Canelo doesn't do. For example, he bounces in and out of range with that, however people want to describe it, Soviet style. Bounces in and out of range constantly. And that was clearly throwing off Bud Crawford's timing. Madrimov has got much quicker feet than Canelo Alvarez. Doesn't hit as hard, not as strong. But he's got much quicker feet. And the bouncing in and out of range was throwing off Bud's timing. And of course, Madrimov would then punch with a straight right hand off that bounce. Canelo don't do that. Canelo throws fewer punches. He's more flat-footed, especially these days. So I completely understand that it's a totally different style matchup, despite the size disparity. Be that as it may, Canelo has got a long history of having the judges see things his way. It's not to say that Canelo always wins by enormous margins on the scorecards. He doesn't always. But the judges have seen fit on numerous occasions to see things his way in very close fights, rather than see it the way of his opponent. I mean, even when he lost to Floyd Mayweather, there was one judge who, did they score it a draw? Or did they score it in Canelo's favor? I forget now. I think it was a female judge. Crazy. Even against a massive cash cow like Floyd Mayweather, there was still some impetus within the boxing industry to make sure that Canelo got the decision, and he wasn't the star back then that he is today. And since that time, as I say, there's been numerous other occasions when Canelo has got the rub of the green rather than the opponent getting the rub of the green. So he tends to have things go his way. And that is one of the reasons that I do not think Terence Crawford is going to win this fight. Because in order for Crawford to get the fight on the judges' scorecards, because there's a difference between winning the fight in a court of public opinion and winning the fight on the judges' scorecards. He needs to try and win it on the scorecards or stop Canelo even. But in order to do that, he's going to have to hold his feet. Not constantly, necessarily, but in spots, he's going to have to hold his feet and try to land punches, which I don't know whether they'll be able to hurt Canelo, but punches that catch the eye, that knock Canelo's head back or knock his head sideways, that have a big impact, a visible impact when they land, eye-catching shots. He's gonna have to land the kind of shots on Canelo that he landed on Errol Spence, and in doing so, in my mind's eye, he's gonna be putting himself in harm's way. He's gonna be holding his feet for long enough that Canelo will be able to get shots off. And there's a big question mark about whether Terence Crawford can take the type of power that Canelo can dish out. For me, that is what this fight hinges on, the result of this fight. If Terence Crawford can take or not get hit by or not be intimidated by Canelo Alvarez's power in the pocket, then he wins the fight. But in my estimation, he won't be able to do that. He'll get hit with shots, might not even land flush, could land on the chest, on the shoulder, top of the head. And at that stage, you'll realize, okay, I can't afford to get hit flush with these kind of punches. I'm going to have to utilize a lot more movement, not sit down on my shots that much or that often. And that, I think, won't be enough to take the majority of the rounds. If he's moving around a lot, I'm not saying he's going to do a William Skull in there, but if he's moving around a lot, landing relatively light punches, I don't see the judges seeing things his way. He's not a Dimitri Bivol who's 6 foot or 6'1", who can, throw combinations, fast shots, then move out of the way without Canelo being able to land anything in return. Crawford and Canelo are pretty much the same height. Do you know what I mean? So surely Canelo's going to be able to catch him here and there. Now, like I said, if Terence Crawford can figure out where all the shots from Canelo are coming from, block them all, or take them, and otherwise not be intimidated or hurt by them, he should win the fight. He's the more skilled guy here. So, yeah, like I say, I'm repeating myself. That's what it all comes down to for me. But my best guess, and that's all we can do when we're making predictions for boxing matches, is make an educated guess. My best guess is Crawford won't land enough big impact punches to prevent the judges from seeing things Canelo's way. So I'm taking Canelo to win the fight, whether he deserves it or not. I'm taking him to win this fight. I would normally say on points, but Bug Crawford has a very, very strong will. I'm going to come on to Matt's super chat in a second. Just going to finish this thought. Big up Matt Borgerson in the live chat. Terence Crawford has a very, very strong will. He's a closer. He's not like Floyd Mayweather in the sense that he's never satisfied just winning a fight on the cards. He always tries to take you out. That's the type of mentality he has. Will that mentality backfire on him against Canelo? That's the question. Because if Terence Crawford does get stopped, then I think it will be because of that. It will be because of his very bullish mindset when he's in the ring. Always trying to force stoppages and knockouts. If he gets stopped himself, it'll be because he's trying to force a stoppage. Otherwise, Canelo won the cards. That's my take on it. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, I'm 90% sure I'm expecting what we had been before this fight was announced. It's an unrealistic situation that will prove itself on September 13. Matt says, Crawford's the more skilled guy. What shows that? Many things. The fact he can fight in an ambidextrous fashion. It's very difficult when you see Terence Crawford switching from southpaw to orthodox, if you didn't know which hand was his dominant one, whether he was naturally southpaw or naturally orthodox. That's how seamless it is. Canelo Alvarez can't do that. Terence Crawford has got a better back foot game than Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez does have a back foot game, but it's not as good nor as slick as Terence Crawford's back foot game, where again he switches up southpaw, orthodox, moves left and right. He can fight on the inside, he can fight on the outside. The only area for me that Canelo is superior to Terence Crawford, or used to be, is head movement coming forward. There was a period of Canelo Alvarez's career, like when he fought Danny Jacobs, for example, where he developed very, very good head movement on the front foot. Very good head movement. And Canelo Alvarez has still got a very good defense. Front foot or back foot. He can block shots. He knows where he is in the ring. He knows how to judge distance, so on and so forth. Very smart fighter, Canelo. But in terms of all-round comprehensive skill, Bud Crawford is several levels, in my opinion, above Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez, defensively, has got some nice moves. But one thing Canelo has never done that well, and Bud Crawford does do this quite well, at least at long range and on the back foot, is Canelo doesn't transition that smartly from defense to offense. So, an example of what I'm talking about would be Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, on the front foot as a pressure fighter, that's the only way he fought, of course, was very, very good at transitioning from defense to offense. If you threw a jab at him, he's going to slip that jab, bang! He hits you in the mouth with his own jab, or a body shot, or a right hand, or a left hook. If you throw a left hook at him, he's ducking underneath that left hook, and he's coming back with his own. That's how Mike Tyson was. Hair trigger with the counters on the front foot, but there'd be a defensive move first. Canelo Alvarez isn't that dynamic when it comes to switching from defense to offense. His defense is relatively passive. He'll put his hands up. If he's not moving his head, he'll just put his hands up and block all your shots and wait for you to stop punching. An example would be when he fought Dimitri Bivol. You look at the early rounds of the fight, Bivol's tattooing him with shots. Canelo's just got his arms up blocking, laying on the ropes. All right? So he doesn't transition very well from defense to offense. He's got kind of a passive defense. Whereas Terence Crawford transitions far better. He'll block a shot or duck a shot and come back with it. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot more of that from Terence Crawford. So overall for me, he's a more skilled fighter. But I think the size will be the determining factor in the result of this one. Big up Matt for the super chat. He says, Crawford has not fought enough challenging opponents for me to clearly say that he's the superior fighter. Not his fault though. Okay, big up Matt. There are many who question Terence Crawford's resume. If he were to pull this off, and again, to clarify, I'm not expecting him to pull this off, but if he were to pull this off, nobody can question his resume after that. Jumping up all those weight classes, no rehydration clause. This ain't Floyd Mayweather fighting a green, weight-drained Canelo Alvarez. No. This is Terence Crawford jumping up to 168 and fighting a far more experienced Canelo, fully hydrated. So if Terence Crawford pulls this off, I don't want to hear any naysayers. Because again, I'm picking Canelo to win. If Crawford pulls this off, he needs to get all the credit in the world. And of course, that's why he's taking this fight. And by the way, I heard, I think it might have been on Talk Sport, so I don't know whether it's true or not, but I heard that Floyd Mayweather is apparently advising Canelo on this fight. Advising Crawford on this fight. Now, big up Supersized Fries for the super chat. I'll come onto your super chat in a second. We're going to get onto Duke McKenzie and Teddy Atlas. Big up Supersized Fries. Let me just finish this thought. In fact, I've lost my thought. Maybe somebody can remind me in the comments. So let's deal with Supersized Fries super chat first then. He says, what's your opinion on Duke McKenzie picking Bud and the reason he gave? I personally disagree with his opinion. I'm expecting a more active Canelo. So, for those of you who don't know, and we will switch up the visuals here so you guys can see. Just getting it all situated. So Duke McKenzie has given his prediction for this fight, as has Teddy Atlas. All right. We'll deal with Duke McKenzie first. This is the video where he gives his prediction. Switch the visuals up for this one too, because on Teddy Atlas's YouTube channel, he's also given his prediction. So with Duke McKenzie, he's picking Terence Crawford not only to win, but to beat the brakes off Canelo Alvarez. He thinks he's going to do a number on Canelo. That's the way he described it. And his rationale for saying this is, in his view, Canelo basically isn't hungry anymore. But Terence Crawford is. Even though Terence Crawford's the older fighter, in Duke McKenzie's view, he's got less miles on the clock and a lot more ambition. He says the Canelo of old, who showed all that great head movement against the likes of Danny Jacobs, that guy is no longer. And a lot of people, including myself, have been saying that there's been a lack of ambition from Canelo since that Dimitri Bivol loss. Perhaps Duke McKenzie thinks that lack of ambition means that we will never see the same Canelo that we saw pre-Bivol ever again. I'm not so sure about that. Yes, Canelo has had a lot of fights now, plenty of miles on the clock, but he's not a guy that takes a lot of punishment, even in his losses. Very good defensively. He's a quality over quantity fighter. He's not a volume puncher. And that also allows him, in my estimation, to be quite well preserved. Canelo knows what's at stake in this fight. He doesn't want to get embarrassed by a welterweight. So I think we're going to see a more up-for-it version of Canelo in this fight with Terence Crawford than we've seen for several fights now. Now, I didn't think his performance against Charlo was that bad. I thought it was all right. Charlo was running around the ring, but Canelo was cutting the ring off quite well. He looked quite fluid. It was far better than what we saw from Canelo against William Skull, Jaime Munguia, or Edgar Berlanga, in my opinion. So I think Canelo can up his game when he feels it's necessary. I just don't think he felt it necessary against those guys. He was winning comfortably. Or he felt like he was winning comfortably against all of them. Here against Crawford, I suspect he will raise his game a bit. So I'm disagreeing with Duke McKenzie in the sense of the result of the fight. I think Canelo's going to win, whether he deserves it or not, because I'm not discounting a scenario where Terence Crawford is very mobile, peppers Canelo Alvarez with shots and gets out the way. It ends up going to the scorecards. Perhaps the majority of neutrals think that Terence Crawford has done enough to win, but the judges see it the other way. I'm not discounting that possibility at all. Okay? I'm just talking about the result of the fight officially, not in the court of public opinion. Officially, I'm expecting a Canelo Alvarez win. All right? But Duke McKenzie, who does have a fantastic prediction record. I'm not saying he gets every single prediction right. Of course he doesn't. Nobody does. Anyone claiming they get every single prediction right, well, you need to explain why you're not a billionaire then. Because you would have bet all the money you have on every single boxing match, and you'd be a billionaire in no time. Right? If you get every single prediction right. So nobody gets every prediction right. Duke McKenzie's most recent incorrect prediction was taking David Adeleye over Filip Hrgović. He said that Adeleye would stop Hrgović somewhere around, I think he said the 10th. Was that a 12-round fight or was it a 10-round fight? I forget. I think it was a 12-round fight. But anyway, Adeleye came close to making Duke McKenzie right in the back end of that fight. He had Hrgović wobbled, right? Probably more wobble than anyone else ever has. Despite the fact that, as I say, Duke McKenzie ultimately got that prediction wrong. So yeah, he gets things wrong. He has in the past, and he surely will in the future. But more often than not, he gets it right. Not just the result, but the manner of victory he tends to get right. He thinks not only will Terence Crawford do a number on Canelo as far as rounds won, he thinks Crawford might be able to even stop Canelo late. To me, that would be extraordinary. Extraordinary. I sound like Gareth A. Davis. Yeah? That would be an extraordinary result. Extraordinary result. I'll be amazed if Terence Crawford, given Canelo's great chin and very good defense, I would be amazed if Terence Crawford stopped him. This is not Errol Spence. This is not a welterweight who hadn't been living the life, whose body had been compromised because of a horror car accident. No. Canelo Alvarez, not saying he doesn't party a little bit here and there, but the guy's in shape 365. Okay? So that is what that is. That's Duke McKenzie's prediction. And also, and I'll come back onto your comments in a second, Teddy Atlas has made basically an identical prediction to Duke McKenzie. He's picking Terence Crawford to win this fight. He said, ever since this fight got made, he was very sure that Terence Crawford was going to get the decision or, get the win one way or another. For very similar reasons to the ones laid out by Duke McKenzie. He doesn't think Canelo has the ambition anymore. He doesn't think Canelo can raise his game to the same level that we saw back when he fought Danny Jacobs, Golovkin, etc., even Kovalev. He doesn't think he can raise his game to that level anymore. Maybe because he's jaded mentally rather than physically. Although, the physical takes its toll as well, but mentally. And he has been doing his version of a victory lap over the past couple of years since he lost to Dimitri Bivol. He hasn't been interested in really challenging himself. Can he get up for it? Teddy Atlas doesn't think he'll be able to get up for it enough to win the fight. So he's going for he's going for Crawford to win as well. Pick up everybody in the chat. Got some super chats coming in here. Big up Supersized Fries. Danny says Canelo will win legitimately. He's more skilled. Okay. Danny's definitely a Canelo fan. I absolutely disagree with Canelo being more skilled. Bigger and strong. He's a very skilled fighter, bigger and stronger than Crawford, but more skilled than Crawford? No. Big up Jay Singh for the super chat. He says, great channel content, been following you and sharing your videos for many years. Big up to Hatman, respect. And big up K Singh. I hope I didn't say Jay a second ago. Big up K Singh. Much appreciated, sir. Big up to you wherever you are in the world. Big up James Wood. He says, James Punchy the Gale versus Carl the Apple Eater Frotch. James Wood in the chat. The Alexander Usyk Kitchen Fitters. Straight out of Sheffield. Years ago, I thought that was a very interesting fight between DeGale and Frotch. But with the passage of time, I'm seeing it more in line with the majority of people back then who thought that Carl Frotch would smash James DeGale to pieces. I think DeGale had the skills to beat Frotch, but I don't think he had the physical strength. That's the thing. DeGale wasn't a very physically strong fighter. So, yeah, I'd go with Carl the Apple Eater. Who brings an apple to a boxing match? Like one of the teachers back in the days who always kept an apple in their pocket. They'd like shine the apple on their sweater, on their jumper, and then eat it. Shout out to Swaggins for the super chat. He says, Hatman not being a downer, but I was never very excited for this fight. Hey, you be as much of a downer as you want. I've never been that excited for this fight. I'm interested in the fight. I'm certainly not excited. There isn't the feeling of anticipation. It's interesting. But sometimes those fights can turn out to be barn burners when we're not expecting too much from it. And one of the reasons that we're not expecting too much from this fight is because neither guy has put on a scintillating performance of recent, right? I mean, Terence Crawford's been inactive. He fought Errol Spence, and then it was ages until he fought Madrimov, and now it's been ages since the Madrimov fight. The Spence fight was scintillating, but that was a very long time ago now. Was it 2 years ago? Something like that. Was it 3 years ago? The Madrimov fight was far from a scintillating performance for Terence Crawford. And Canelo, when's the last time he really impressed? I want to say he looked pretty good in the Charlo fight. But other than that, might have to go back to Kovalev or something the last time he looked really impressive. Or maybe, no, Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant was after. I thought he looked good in the Caleb Plant fight. But it's a long time ago anyway. The most recent memories we have of Canelo were the soporific, horrendous affair against William Skull, the Belanga fight and the Munguia fight. All very pedestrian performances. And I think that is largely behind the lack of excitement going into this Terence Crawford bout. Neither guy's really been setting the world alight over the past couple of years. But big up Swaggins. Shout out to Sean Gallagher for the super chat. He says, thank you for all the entertainment. You're much more than a boxing channel. Keep up the truth seeking. Your message is helping a lot of people, no doubt. Big up Sean Gallagher. I'm glad I can help anyone. Thank you very much for the kind words. I'll keep doing what I do, and I'll try and take it to the next level. Big up James Wood. He says, Tebow Raylat versus Michael Zod of the Hard Road. Definitely Michael Zod. Definitely Michael Zod over Tebow. 1,000,000%. A Tebow boy. A source of endless entertainment watching him hit the bag or do anything boxing related. He couldn't knock the skin off a rice pudding. So, no, definitely Zod over Tebow in the ring or on the hard road. For sure. Big up James Wood. Shout out to Kieran Malcolm for the super chat. He says, Hatman, you was talking about Mayweather advising Bud. Big up Kieran. That is the thought that I lost. Thank you for reminding me, for jogging my memory. Okay, so Mayweather, according to, it might have been Spencer Oliver, so we take it with a grain of salt, has been advising Bud Crawford behind the scenes, giving him some tips and pointers regarding this Canelo Alvarez fight. Now, Bud Crawford has always, to me, come across as a very savvy guy. He's not naive. He's savvy. He's streetwise. I think he can read people quite well and see through snakes. The reason I say that is because Floyd Mayweather doesn't want anybody to surpass him. Never mind what he said in the past about, I want fighters who I signed to do better than me and surpass me. BS. And if that ever were true, it would only apply to people who he was making money off, in my opinion. He ain't making money off Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford's got nothing to do with Mayweather. I don't think Mayweather deep down wants Bud Crawford to get more credit beating Canelo than he got beating Canelo. You don't want that. Now, I'm not saying that Mayweather's necessarily going to give him bad advice to try and get him beat, but I wouldn't put it past him. Seriously, I would not put it past him. But like I say, Bud Crawford is not, or at least doesn't come across, as a naive guy. You know what I mean? He comes across as quite savvy and streetwise. Obviously, he's from the streets, but even in the world of business, he comes across to me as quite a savvy, streetwise type of character. So if Mayweather is trying to misguide him, I suspect Bud Crawford would know. I suspect he knows very well how to assess any advice and decide whether it's sound advice or not. But that thought did go through my head. Mayweather's a jealous guy. He loves the attention. He always wants to be TBE. In my eyes, he never was TBE, but you know, he always wants to have that image. He doesn't want anyone to eclipse him, especially not someone who was professional when he was also professional. You know? These guys were pro at the same time. There's what, a 10-year age difference or something between them? So their careers kind of overlapped a little bit. Just a thought. Mr. Grundy says Mayweather rooting for Canelo. Big up James Wood again for the super chat. He says, Tebow used to message me asking if I could insult my son, who at the time was 6 months old. Tebow is pretty damn disturbed, bro. He told me that he had some type of mental condition, that he was diagnosed with some type of personality disorder. And when he said that, it made a whole heap of sense. You know what I mean? His behavior is so weird. Yeah, he told me he was diagnosed with some type of personality disorder. I can well believe it. Big up James Wood for the super chat. Big up Paul McAllister. He says, Hatman, what's your most crazy boxing opinion? My most crazy boxing opinion? Big up Michael Thompson for the super chat. He says, been listening for years now. Big up Hatman. And big up yourself, sir. My most crazy boxing opinion. I have to think about that one. Do I have any really crazy boxing opinions? Help me out here, live chat. What boxing opinions do I have that you think are crazy? What boxing opinions? I can't think off the top of my head about a boxing opinion I have that would be considered crazy. People are asking, who's Tebow? Tebow is a French guy who used to be in my Facebook group back in the days. Someone says, Belly, you having a better IQ than Usyk. Well, you mistaken me for Johnny Nelson. I certainly never said that. Truth Seeker says Floyd is very comfortable in his resume and money. He ain't worried about Canelo and Bud. I beg to differ. If he's comfortable in his money. If he's comfortable in his resume, why is he always still to this day taking swipes and jabs at other great fighters? Why is he still doing that? The most recent example being Roy Jones. Mayweather's always been an envious type of character, in my view. That's why he was always so disparaging of great old fighters, and would always try and put them down and downplay their achievements and, oh, this guy lost and that. Like, nah, man. To me, he always came across as a jealous guy. Big up Suited and Booted. Says, evening, Hatman. Did you hear your shout out on Adeola Depot's Green Chair live last week? Golden era of heavyweights was the shout out. I didn't catch his live, but big up Adeola Depot. I've watched his journey and it's been remarkable. You know, nothing but love So, yeah, big up Adeola Depot each and every time. Paul McAllister says, an opinion where you know you're 100% in the minority with. The thing about those type of opinions is that they're usually fleeting, as in, if I've got an opinion that I'm totally in the minority with, and then it gets proven to be correct, all of a sudden, it's no longer seen as crazy. Do you know what I mean? Retrospectively. So, I can't think, man. I really can't think of one at the moment. Obviously, I've picked underdogs many times, and the underdog has managed to win a fight. But, I mean, you could go back to when AJ signed to fight Jarrell Miller, and I was saying Miller had a good chance. I was saying if AJ can't hurt Miller, then Miller's probably going to win the fight. Worse to that effect. And then again, I was very bullish on certain predictions, which turned out to be horribly wrong. The most recent example of a horribly wrong prediction would be picking AJ over Dubois by knockout. And that was a horrible prediction. Although I did say, again, from the very start, and I said it repeatedly throughout my pre-fight videos, that my prediction is predicated on AJ being able to hurt Dubois early in the fight. And I always said if he can't hurt him and get his respect early in the fight, Dubois is probably going to run him over. The latter obviously happened. He couldn't hurt Dubois early in the fight. Couldn't land anything other than that one shot in the fifth to get Dubois' respect. And yeah, Dubois ran him over. But that wasn't seen as a crazy prediction at the time because most other people were picking AJ as well. Do you know what I mean? But big up Paul McAllister. I'm sorry I couldn't come up with a more interesting example, but off the top of my head, I can't think. Big up Jake. He says, yes, Atman, hope you're good. Still struggling with boxing interest at the moment, but you're the only channel I'm watching about the sport. Big up Jake. Hopefully I can provide you with some entertainment talking about boxing, even if watching it is not that entertaining for you right now. Indeed, strangingness. It's only deluded if it doesn't work. That's it. The box says Frazier losing to AJ was a crazy opinion to me. Okay, if that's crazy to you, I'd stand by it. I think Joe Frazier would lose to AJ. I can't see a guy. You know, Joe Frazier in his prime was 205 pounds. And although he was a very mentally tough guy, he didn't have the greatest chin. Joe Frazier had maybe an average chin. He was down many times. Oscar Bonavena put him on the floor. Do you know what I mean? So he didn't have a great chin. He was hurt by Ali in the second fight, stopped by Ali in the third fight. Hurt early in the second fight by Ali. So, I don't know, I think Joe Frazier just be too small, in my opinion again, just too small. In his prime, he was 205 pounds. Much smaller than Alexander Usyk. Way smaller. I mean, Alexander Usyk for his cruiserweight fights would have been way bigger than 205 pounds in the ring. I have to guess, you know. And at 205 pounds, Joe Frazier wasn't even that solid. He was always a little bit fleshy at 205. When he fought George Foreman, I think he was 214 pounds and he was kind of fat in that fight. That was above his normal fight, way above his normal fighting weight. And actually, going back to the people are asking for the Mike Tyson gifts. Let's see if I can bring the Mike Tyson gifts back in. People like the Mike Tyson gifts for some reason here. Let's try to bring them back in. Because I had a thought about Mike Tyson today. Just a brief thought. Where's the Mike Tyson gif? Yeah, here it is. Let's drag this in. You'll see it come up. So, Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, the exhibition bout. People are saying this is going to tarnish Mike Tyson's legacy and maybe even Floyd Mayweather's resume, Floyd Mayweather's legacy as well. I don't see why it would, given the fact that this is an exhibition bout, so it's not going on their official records for one. Mike Tyson obviously fought Jake Paul, lost to Jake Paul. That did go on his official record. So if some people want to argue that tarnished his resume, okay, I don't agree. But that's coming from the perspective of somebody who lived through Mike Tyson's whole career. All right, watching his fights and understanding what Mike Tyson actually was. Understanding the context within which he lost to Jake Paul. He was damn near 60 years of age. Okay? So it's not like Jake Paul could have beaten the Mike Tyson in 1986. It wouldn't have gone 30 seconds, that fight. Obviously with Mike Tyson winning. But maybe some super casuals won't be able to tell the difference. I don't know. So I don't see it, and I'm talking about Mike Tyson versus Floyd Mayweather now, I don't see it tarnishing his legacy. Because again, it's not going to go on his official boxing record. And for two, Mike Tyson has already fought a couple of exhibitions. He fought, obviously, the exhibition against Roy Jones. But at the back end of his career proper, he fought an exhibition against one of his sparring partners called Nate Tubbs. Any of you guys remember that? We're talking 20 years ago, maybe more than 20 years ago. 23, 24 years ago, something like that. 22, 23 years ago, maybe. Mike Tyson fought an exhibition against one of his sparring partners, a big, fat guy who I think was the nephew of Tony Tubbs. Yeah, he fought an exhibition against him. Mike came in overweight himself. He was wearing a t-shirt. So I don't see how fighting exhibitions tarnishes fighters' resumes at all. Especially, when they're pushing 60, irrespective of what happens in there, it's an exhibition. You don't know what the rules are because it's an exhibition. This is not like prime for prime Mike Tyson versus Floyd Mayweather at all. You'd have to be very dim-witted as well as super duper casual to not be able to tell the difference. Do you know what I mean? It's like Mike Tyson during his professional career proper lost to Lennox Lewis. But the majority of us don't even count that against Mike Tyson's legacy. Because he was so washed up by that point. The fight might as well have not happened. Okay, Lennox Lewis is actually a year older than Mike Tyson, but he was far better preserved. He'd been living the life. He hadn't been... Lennox Lewis wasn't as disciplined as an Usyk, for example, or even the Klitschko's. He did used to gain a little bit in between fights. But he was a far more clean living individual than Mike Tyson. Let's just put it that way. So he was, despite being a year older than Tyson, much better preserved, and he had far more in the tank left. It was clear as day to see. So, despite that fight happening, it was a real fight for the heavyweight title. very few people look at that and say, at least among hardcores, very few people look at that and say, you know, that was a significant fight in the sense that it proved Lennox Lewis was better than Mike Tyson. Now, if you think a prime Lewis would have beaten a prime Tyson, that's okay. But the fight they had certainly doesn't prove that, in my view, and in the view, I want to say, of most hardcore boxing fans, because Tyson was totally washed. You don't look at that and think, oh yeah, that fight would have gone if they were both in their primes. No. So if most people are willing to concede that about Mike Tyson, that yeah, he lost to Lewis, but that wasn't anything like a prime Tyson or, you know, remotely close to. Therefore, we don't really count that. If they're willing to concede that, why wouldn't they concede Mike Tyson, you know, was an old man when he lost to Jake Paul, so we shouldn't really count that either. I mean, okay, it's a loss, but it doesn't take away from his resume. That's the point I'm making. Same way, if Mike Tyson goes in there and gets embarrassed by Floyd Mayweather. Mayweather's 11 years younger, whatever it is. Kept himself in much better shape, has lived a much cleaner life than Mike Tyson ever lived. You know, Mike Tyson's body has fallen to bits. You could see that in the run-up to the Jake Paul fight. The shoulder programming, which was on Netflix, is still up on Netflix. You can go watch it. Look when he's moving around the ring and hitting the bag. They showed so little of his sparring precisely because he looked so terrible. You could tell that from the few clips that they showed of his sparring that he was absolutely falling to pieces. He had braces on both his knees. There was a moment in that Netflix pre-fight stuff where Mike Tyson's hitting the bag and he knocks himself off balance hitting the bag. And I was like, oh my God. This guy really is geriatric. One of the things that characterized Mike Tyson in his career proper, pro career proper, was fantastic balance. And yet here we have him pushing 60 and he can't even hold his balance on a heavy bag. Come on, people. You know, so losing to a YouTuber at that stage of the game, to me, it don't take away from his legacy at all. I don't think he can tarnish his legacy with something like that. People should know what that really is, you know? That's my take on it. But big up. All right, big up Suited and Booed. Big up Danny for the super chat. He says, Crawford's defense is rubbish. He just puts his hands up. Unless he decides to run, which he's never done, he's going to get hit by a 168-pounder in 10-ounce gloves. His defense certainly isn't rubbish. Is it great? No. He's hittable. But one of the reasons that Terence Crawford is somewhat hittable is because he's so offensively minded. That's the reason. Terence Crawford's always looking to hit you with big shots. He's always making it a point to set you up and hit you with something big. And when that's your mentality, you're holding your feet to look for big shots all the time. And he throws a lot more shots than Canelo does. See, Canelo is offensive minded as well, but he's extremely selective about the punches he throws. Canelo will have his hands up the majority of the fight, blocking shots, ducking this, ducking that, coming back with counters, occasionally leading, very, very selective with his punches. But Terence Crawford throws a lot more. A lot more. And like I say, because he's offensive, there are more opportunities for opponents to land on him. But to say his defense is rubbish, I totally disagree with that. When Terence Crawford wants to be elusive, he's pretty good at it. I remember when he fought Ricky Burns, when he fought, I always forget the guy's name, the Eastern European guy who he fought at 140, Victor Postal. When he was fighting those guys, moving around, switch hitting, it was difficult to land a glove on him. So when Crawford wants to be defensive, he can do it. I'm not saying he's like as good at it as Mayweather or Pernell Whitaker, but he can make himself difficult to hit. It's just that that's not really his mentality. He's not afraid of taking a shot to land his own. He'll need to be, in my estimation, against Canelo. He'll need to be more mindful. So I take your point in that sense, you know. I don't think he can afford to be as cavalier as he normally is at 147, 154. He'll need to be more careful about what he's doing because of what's coming back. So I'll definitely agree with that. Shout out to Paul McAllister. He says, fighters are defined by their wins, not by their losses. Primarily by their wins. You have to take losses into account, but it's the context within which the losses happen. If the losses are happening way past the fighter's prime, to me, it doesn't even count. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever. You know, Roy Jones getting knocked out by everybody and their grandmother over a decade past his prime. It's like, whatever. That doesn't take away from what Roy Jones was at his peak, at his zenith. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with Paul McAllister. It's like your losses can't erase all of your wins. Sometimes people do that when they're critiquing a fighter's resume. They'll overemphasize the losses as if they completely, you know, like I say, erase, cancel out all the wins. They don't. People used to do that a lot with Lennox Lewis. They'd say, oh, he's a chinny Canadian. He got knocked out by Oliver McCall and Hasim Ratman. Yeah, but he also beat Razor Ruddock, Evander Holyfield, David Tua, Vitaly Klitschko. Do you know what I mean? Ray Mercer, although that was a very close fight. Andrew Galotta, Hasim Ratman in the rematch, Francois, so on and so forth. And with Lennox Lewis in particular, he beat better fighters than he lost to. So why are we focusing on his two losses when he beat better fighters than those anyway? Afro Jam says, if Canelo had footwork of the past, Berlanga wouldn't have made it past round 5, excuse me. Big up Gaz for the super chat. He says, did you see Thor's 210 kilo deadlift? Strongest man ever, question mark? I'm not a weights expert, strongman expert, or anything like that, so I've got no idea on what the records are. But what I will say is, when it comes to like Guinness Book of World Records and all that kind of stuff, you could say that somebody is the strongest man on record, but to say that somebody's the strongest man ever is not something that can ever be proved, right? Because there was a time when there were no records, or at least there are no surviving records from the majority of human existence. So there may have been like random genetic freaks who could lift more than Thor or whoever else, right? Even without roids. But in terms of the records we've got, is he the strongest guy ever? I don't know, maybe. Mark Odell says, Tyson Fury can deadlift 600 kilos. Danny says, Hatman, has Bud got Kenyan ancestry? Very doubtful. Very doubtful. Not impossible, but very doubtful. Because the triangle trade between Britain, Africa, and the Americas took slaves from West Africa and Central Africa, not from East Africa. East African slaves were taken to the Middle East, and even as far as India, I think, but not to the Americas. To my knowledge, anyway, no. So very unlikely. I mean, saying that, obviously, there's always been migrations from different parts of Africa. East Africans crossing into West Africa, West Africans crossing into East Africa, West Africans crossing into Southern Africa. That's been going on for thousands of years. A surprising example would be Skepta. You guys know the rapper Skepta? If you read up about him, he's Nigerian, but his family don't originate, at least one side of them, they don't originate in Nigeria. They actually originate from Ethiopia. From what I've read, his family are actually Falashas. Falashas are Ethiopian Jews. Read up about it. Skepta's family, or at least half of his family, when they trace their lineage, their ancestry, they're not originally from West Africa, Nigeria. They trace it back to Ethiopia. They are Ethiopian Jews. So yeah, like I was saying, there's always been migrations from various different parts of Africa to other parts of Africa. Stranginess says the genetic difference between West and East in sports is interesting. I watched the thing about it. There's big genetic differences between different populations in Africa. Southern Africans, for example, are very different genetically to West Africans, and East African Nilotic people, they're very different phenotypically and genetically to West Africans and Southern Africans and Central Africa as well. Africans are the most genetically diverse group on the planet. I've seen some studies say the Africans have got more genetic diversity. I'm talking about black Africans have got more genetic diversity among them than all the other races combined. I mean, there's some very surprising genetic studies that show that in some cases you can get a black Nigerian who is actually genetically more closely related to a white European than he would be to, let's say, a Khoisan in Southern Africa. Even though phenotypically the Nigerian looks a lot more similar to the Khoisan, genetically, there is a difference between phenotype and genetics. It's like the people of Papua New Guinea phenotypically look far more similar to black Africans than they do to Chinese, right? But genetically, they're apparently more closely related to Chinese than they are to black Africans. Yeah, despite the fact that phenotypically they look more like black Africans. So, yeah, genetics is a very mysterious thing. Let's switch the visuals back up here. Canelo Crawford. Strangeness says, isn't there some countries in Africa where the average height is like 6'2", and then there's a country where the average height is 5'5"? Well, I guess you're talking about Nilotic people. Nilotic people, and the word Nilotic comes from the Nile. So these are people of the Nile Valley. Nilotic people typically are much taller, darker, less muscular, and virtually hairless in terms of body hair and facial hair compared to other Africans. So yeah, Nilotic people tend to grow much, much taller than other African groups. And they might be the tallest people, the tallest ethnic group in the world, Nilotic people. Lucan says, I find it hard to believe Skepta is Ethiopian based off his phenotype. Well, half of his family, and there are Ethiopians who are darker. They're not all like light-skinned and, you know, what have you. There are Ethiopians who look like Skepta. It just would seem at this point, the light-skinned Ethiopian phenotype is predominant, but there are darker ones as well. Afro Jam says, Botswana and Namibia have short stature. There are some pygmy groups in Central Africa. Yeah. In Congo, you got pygmies living in there. I'm not sure if there are any left in Uganda. They might have been wiped out. And the Khoisan are not quite as short as pygmies, but they're very small. Like the pure-blooded Khoisan, they're small. They're not like Bantu people, you know. Much more diminutive. JR says, is a safari on your African bucket list, Hatman? Not really. Not really, to be fair. I want to stay away from the wild animals, lions and leopards, you know, hippos, crocodiles, not to mention the mosquitoes. I don't have any burning desire to go to go on a safari myself. A shout out to Danny. He says, Crawford will be walking first to the ring since his fight with Ricky Burns, ? Will this affect his performance? I don't think that'll affect his performance. No, I don't think so. I don't think it would affect either guy's performance. They've seen it all before, you know, been there, seen it, done it. I don't think those kind of formalities would bother either man. Warren Williams says, he walked first against Errol Spence. I don't think it will bother either man. Fernie G says, man, what level of fighter can you see the current Mayweather beating, if any at all? Probably still beat Pacquiao now. I'll go with that. I reckon he'd probably still beat Pacquiao. Do I think he would beat Crawford right now? Hell no. Would he beat Ennis? I think he could make himself a nuisance against Ennis because Ennis is not the most defensive guy in the world, but I still don't think he'd beat Ennis right now. You know, whatever he is, 49? Okay, Through the Storm says, Hatman, you do know Turkey wants Bud to win. This is known even by Canelo. How is that known? You know, Turki Al-Sheikh is a very wily operator because it seemed going into those two Usyk Partridge fights that he really wanted Partridge to win. And it's still possible in my mind that he did. But there's another possibility, which is that the only way that Partridge was going to sign for those fights is if he felt like Turkey was biased in his favor. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's why Turkey was coming out with the stuff he was coming out with, saying, I want Fury to win, and, you know, being ostensibly very pro-Fury. Maybe it's because he feared that Fury might, if he didn't think that the establishment, assuming Turkey was part of the establishment, was on his side. You see what I'm saying? So Turkey's a very wily, shrewd operator. He's a very, very shrewd operator. JR says he played Partridge hard. Danny says, remember Canelo and Turkey had beef a year or two ago? Yeah, but since then, Turkey paid him, what was it, over $200 million for the William Skull fight? Can't have been that much of a beef if you were to pay him that much to fight William Skull. Cash says he wants Hamza to beat Canelo. Now that I could believe. That I could believe. Yeah. If there was a Hamza Shiraz bias in favor of Shiraz, oh yeah, I could believe he wants Shiraz to beat Canelo. Oh yeah. That one I can believe. J. Cool says Partridge will be a shell of himself if he comes back. Yeah, that's the thing about Partridge, isn't it? He talks the talk, but he don't walk the walk as far as being an all-time great. He's a fantastic fighter, Partridge. I've always said that. But he's not willing to do what is necessary to be considered by sensible boxing fans as one of the greatest to ever do it. Instead, he wants to sit on the sidelines when he could be fighting contenders and whatnot. Play it safe and try and leapfrog, jump the queue to a shot with Usyk again. Mark Odell says Partridge will reappear the day after Usyk retires. Yeah, I agree with you, Danny. They did Adames dirty. I was quite surprised that Teddy Atlas thought that was legitimately close, or that maybe Shiraz got the nod. I was like, I don't know what fight Teddy was watching. For me, that was a clear Adames win, but there you go. Apparently the audio's stuttering. Big up James Clifford for the super chat. Try refreshing your page or browser. See if it makes any difference. People are saying the audio's really bad and stuttering now. Damn. Let me get up on my browser here, see if it is the same for me. Kyle says it's fine, so it might be some people, but not others. Some people are saying it's fine, other people are. So I would try, anyone who's having issues with the audio, I would say try and refresh. Yeah, others are saying it's fine on their end. Try refresh. So big up James Clifford, says he's testing the super chat. Big up. Cash says Fury's chin is going and he knows it. In my opinion, that's why he won't fight the likes of AJ Dubois and anyone else not named Usyk. Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't think it's just his chin that he's concerned about. I think it's his all-round athleticism, reflexes, fitness, you know? Because here we have a guy in Luke Partridge who doesn't look after himself at all. Never really has. I mean, you know, face planting outside of a pub following the first Usyk fight while Usyk was already studying the first fight in the gym, making adjustments 2 weeks after the fight. Whereas Partridge is piling on the pounds, spamming Mars bars, Snickers bars, Turkish delights, munchies, Lion bars, Kit Kats, Twixes, Aeros, Bounty bars, Dairy Milk Fruit and Nut, Crunchies, Whisper bars. I'm going through all the chocolates I can think of off the top of my head because you know Tyson Fury was scoffing them. He was comfort eating after that loss to Usyk, the first one. The Diet Cokes. Bounty. Yep. You know, generally when it comes to junk food and stuff like that, I much prefer American junk food. I much prefer American fizzy drinks, right? Soda, as they call it in America, to British ones. But when it comes to chocolate, confectionery, British confectionery is way better than American confectionery in terms of chocolates. Way better. Way better. You think of what they have in America, they got like Hershey bars, which are mid. You know what I mean? Hershey's mid, bro. Reese's. Reese's are alright. They're cool. But Cadbury's is elite. You know? Yeah, the sugar tax destroyed fizzy drinks in the UK. That's true. But even before the sugar tax, I didn't like UK fizzy drinks as much as America. And obviously, I'm not saying that these companies are British. Many of them are American companies, but they have British versions of the same fizzy drinks, you know? The British versions generally, for me anyway, for my taste, not as good. In terms of taste, I'm sure they're more healthy. Americans pack loads of chemicals and all sorts of stuff into their drinks. Hey, probably killing you, not even slow, but quick. But they taste good while they're doing it. But when it comes to chocolate, yeah, the UK is very good when it comes to chocolate, man. Right? Sugary chocolate. Cadbury's is all the way up there in the upper echelon. You know, Fernie G says he's sleeping on Snickers. Snickers is alright. It's alright. I like Snickers ice cream better than the normal Snickers. The Snickers is it's alright. You know, Snickers and Mars bar have always just been they're cool. Does anyone really like Mars bars? Mars bars are cool, but they're just, I don't know. That's nothing special. Yeah, Twix is elite. Twix is elite. Twix, Kit Kat. I like Bounty. Somebody earlier on said Bounty's rubbish. I like Bounty. Yeah, Mars ice cream and Snickers ice cream are nice. Yeah. I'm a fan of Iron Brew. Danny says Coca-Cola is the best drink after a meal. I like Coca-Cola in a glass bottle. The Mexican version or the American version. Yeah, which has more syrup in it. It's sweeter. A sweet, tall glass bottle of Coca-Cola? That is hitting. Trust me. In hot weather? Yeah, Mars ice cream is good, as is Snickers ice cream. Yeah, I'll definitely give you those ones. Ferrero Rocher, big old Afro Soul. Yeah, Ferrero Rocher is elite. Afro Jam says the Nigerian version of is mad. The Nigerian version of what? Glass all day. Lion Bar is very good. Oh yeah. Lion Bar's underrated, you know. Whisper's good. Whisper's an underrated chocolate. Let's not even pretend. Whisper's underrated. In fact, I'm going to say I prefer Whisper over Aero. Aero's cool, but Whisper's got something else to it. So Whisper over Aero. Afro Soul says Hatman's really a foodie because he's 100% spot on with American versus British food takes. Dr. Pepper's cool. You know, it's cool. The Bianca says Whisper is pure air, bro. Hey, whether you want to call it pure air or whatever, it tastes good. And I'm comparing it to Aero because they're both full of air. But Whisper's better. It's got like smaller air bubbles. Then Aero's got like bigger air bubbles. In terms of like crisps, corn snacks in the UK, growing up, I always loved Skips. You know, KP Skips? I found Skips extremely Moorish. Like I could go through, and they're full of air as well, right? Skips. I could go through endless bags of Skips. Endless bags of Skips. And even Quavers. Quavers are very Moorish as well. Now, Double Decker's dead. I never liked Double Decker. I always thought that was horrible. Squares are good. Chips. You know the chips? Are they called fries or what are they called? Chip? You know the ones that they're shaped like French fries? Yeah, Wotsits are elite. The box says Chili Heat Wave Doritos. My favorite Doritos are the flaming hot, the one that come in a purple pack. They were actually out here. I tried them for the first time ever here. I understand that they're available in the UK now, but I suspect the UK ones are not the same. The ones they have here are imported from America, and they are elite. And they also have a type of cheese, which I've never seen in the UK. You know, like a dipping cheese. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a Spanish word. Tortistos, or I don't know how you pronounce it. But that dipping cheese is also elite. It's way better than Doritos dipping cheese. Doritos dipping cheese is dead out. The Spanish dipping cheese that they have here, come in a jar, that is elite. Now, there's a golden Toblerone. It might be a limited edition Toblerone. That golden, because I've never been a big fan of Toblerone, but the golden one, that is actually really nice. I used to love Monster Munch back in the days, but they changed the formula, not formula, the recipe at some point. But when I was in secondary school, I used to rinse pickled onion Monster Munch. Also, Space Raiders. Yeah, I used to rinse pickled onion Space Raiders. Oh my days. I would rinse pickled onion Space Raiders to the point where my mouth was like dry and sore from all the vinegar flavoring. Big up Adam Fulks for the super chat. He says, Mayweather and Crawford versus Jamel Charlo. Both of them would beat Jamel Charlo, in my opinion. Mayweather is anywhere close to his prime. Crawford even now. Yeah, take both of them over Charlo. Big up Adam Fulks. Shout out to Through the Storm. He says, Hatman, change your pick, bro. Change your pick, bro. Don't be on the wrong side of history. It's not too late. You know, deep down, Bud's in a different league of talent altogether. I agree he's more skilled, but I suspect the size will be, I'm not saying the size will be too much for Crawford to win, but I think the size will be too much for Crawford to win convincingly enough for the judges to give him the decision. That's the way I see it. If I'm wrong, it's no big deal. Being on the wrong side of history here, doesn't bother me in the slightest. A shout out to Through the Storm. It'll be a remarkable achievement for Bud Crawford if he wins this fight. If he beats the brakes off Canelo, or if it's a close fight and he gets the decision, I'll be happy because at least the judges have been objective, right? Whoever wins, I'll be happy as long as the judges are objective. May the best man win. But from a historical perspective, if Bud pulls this off and does it convincingly, hats off. You know? Hats off. Danny says, your official pick is Canelo illegitimately. No, my official pick is Canelo, whether it's legitimate or illegitimate, because I have to factor in the boxing politics, you know? I'm not saying Canelo can't win legitimately at all. I'm just saying when I factor everything, if we're talking about the result of the fight, I expect Canelo to remain undisputed come Sunday morning. Whether he does it legit or illegit, I expect him to do it either way. Shout out to Peter Marshall. Maltesers. I prefer Munchies to Maltesers. I think Munchies are more tasty. Maltesers are alright. In terms of the one that come in packs, I like M&M's. They're American, obviously. Munchies are very Moorish. What the other one called that begins with an R that come in packs? I forget the name of them now. Galaxy is also elite. Galaxy's got a smooth taste. Damn, Galaxy's got a smooth taste, doesn't it? Cadbury is great chocolate, but Galaxy's got a smoothness to it. You know, like when you have, I stopped drinking 7 years ago, but you know when you have like a Revels, they're the ones. Yes, Revels. They're good, you know, they're underrated. But you know when you have like a really expensive, smooth rum or whiskey, it's like really expensive, and you drink it and you're like, damn, that's smooth. Because normally when you go cheaper when it comes to spirits, the taste is more harsh, right? When you have like a really expensive rum or whiskey, you taste it and you're like, damn, that's smooth. It's way smoother than you used to. Similar thing with Galaxy. I mean, Galaxy's got a smooth taste to it. Very smooth taste. Warren Williams says, people say that, but they didn't rob Bivol because Bivol made it far too one-sided for them to rob him. And that's what I suspect Crawford won't be able to do. I don't think Crawford, because of his lack of size, will be able to make it as one-sided as Bivol did, such that the judges don't dare rob him. Because there were many moments in the Bivol fight where Bivol had Canelo pinned against the ropes and he was just teeing off with combinations and there was nothing coming back from Canelo. Do you know what I mean? Because he had him timed in terms of the hand speed, the foot speed, jumping back out. It's like, Gold bars are underrated, Earth summed up. I've always liked gold bars. Oh, yeah. Gold bars are underrated. Oh, yes, they are. Gold bars are like not quite white chocolate. It's like golden chocolate. That's the best way you could describe it. Kind of like Caramac, you know? Like golden chocolate. It's not even milk chocolate. It's not quite white chocolate. Golden chocolate. Kylie says, I like those middle class crisps, Tyrells, those pretentious crisps. I'm not really a fan of those. For me, the working class crisp tastes better. Those yuppie crisps, they don't impress me. Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, have you rewatched Canelo versus Callum Smith? No, I watched it once. That was enough. And Callum Smith did well to get through that fight, to be fair. With one arm, do you know what I mean? Just getting battered against the ropes for most of the fight. He did well to get through it. Yeah, I quite like after 8 mints, but you can't have too many of them. Can't have too blonde chocolate, somebody said there. Rolos are cool. I like Turkish Delight, personally. It's an acquired taste. Some people hate it. Yeah, Ferrero Rocher is a elite. Somebody says Dime is overrated. I don't mind Dime. It's all right. McCoy's salt and vinegar, they're goated. Yeah, Pringles are good. Shout out to Through the Storm. He says Canelo couldn't even properly hurt Bum Rider, who has smaller dimensions than Bud. Bud is going to school that flat-footed, no-combo having steroid head. Okay, strong words from Through the Storm. You feel strongly about it. That's all good. Okay, yeah, Canelo couldn't... Well, Canelo did hurt John Ryder and he dropped him. But as I said earlier on, the thing about John Ryder is he's used to getting hit by guys the size of Canelo. Bud Crawford's not used to getting hit by people that size. So as much as Bud Crawford can bulk up and all that kind of business, he's just not used to being hit by people as big as that. And that will be the ultimate test. How he copes with the super middleweight power and strength. If he does cope with it, I think he wins the fight. If he's not intimidated by it or hurt by it, I think he wins. But I suspect he will at least be intimidated by it to some extent, and that will hamper his performance. That's my best guess. Could I be wrong? Of course. And if I'm wrong, hey, hats off to Bud Crawford. Okay, people are talking about Dubai chocolate. I saw a story the other day, right? Danny says, you need to rewatch it before the Bud fight and it'll sway your prediction. Look how Canelo overcame Smith's reach. I'm not sure why it would sway my prediction since I'm picking Canelo to win. But, okay. Oh yeah, Dubai chocolate, excuse me. So, as I've said, Bueno's nice, Gorguga. Kinder Bueno, that's German, right? Kinder is like, they're German chocolate, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but Bueno's very nice. Because Kinder means child in German, doesn't it? So, as I've said many times, I lived in the Middle East for a couple years. And I tried all their traditional sweets, or a lot of their traditional sweets and stuff they have out there. The names of the stuff I couldn't even tell you because they've got so many different kind of sweets. For those who don't know, Arabs are absolutely sweet crazy. They love sweet confectionery maybe more than any other group on the planet. They're absolutely crazy about sweet things, right? Arabs. And so I do have to make a distinction between the traditional Dubai chocolate, which they make in like those Arab sweet factories and sweet shops, to the mass-produced, commercialized Dubai chocolate, which is not the same. Yeah, it's like Turkish Delight, the one that you get in the corner shop, is nothing like the Turkish Delight from Turkey. Do you know what I mean? So when you're talking about Dubai chocolate, the authentic one is very nice. Yeah, it's very nice. But if you get like the commercialized one, which they have in Dubai as well, by the way, Milka. Wow, do they still sell that? Do they still sell Milka? I remember when that came out, at least in the UK. I remember when that was new in the UK, Milka. They came in a purple wrapper, right? With a cow on it. Milka, yeah. Oh, Kinder Bueno is Italian. Okay, why was I thinking it was German? Oh, yeah, that makes sense that it's made by Ferrero. Yeah, maybe I've seen a German advert for it. But Kinder, again, Kinder's a German word. That's why I'm thinking it's German. Kinder's not. What's the word for child in Italian? Why is it called Kinder then? Because they're using a German word. Yeah, Raffaello are elite. I agree with that. Raffaello's very nice. Wow, Afro Gem says Milka has made a big return. Is that right? I thought Milka had gone out of business. They're still around? I literally remember when Milka launched in the UK. With this like purple wrapper on the chocolate with a cow on the front. I remember that. I remember when, I've said this in a previous stream, Lucozade Orange came out in the 90s. Lucozade Orange was elite before they reduced the sugar. Oh, Lucozade Orange with the 90s level of sugar, banging. Because even before sugar tax, they were reducing the amount of sugar in stuff and salt. So, for example, I saw a video on YouTube of somebody comparing cornflakes, UK cornflakes, for their salt and sugar content today compared to in the 80s. And in the 80s, bro, the amount of salt and sugar that cornflakes had in them was crazy. But they tasted better, I'm telling you. The cornflakes from the 80s. Yo, I'm glad I grew up in the 80s and 90s to taste all that sugar. And also, I'm old enough to remember the days when crisp packets were bursting with actual crisps. I remember the gaslighting tactics that Walkers, they're the first ones I remember doing it, came up with to convince you that filling the packet of crisp with mostly air was somehow for your benefit. I remember when they started marketing it, oh, they've got all this extra air in it to keep the crisp fresh. Yo, before they started doing that, a bag of Walkers was bursting full of crisps. All the way to the top, it was filled up with crisps. Yeah? Now it's like mostly air. The only crisp brand that don't bump you and actually fills up their container to the top is Pringles. Yeah, Pringles still fill their tubes up to the top with crisps. But yeah, I remember when that transition happened. Yeah, because it was right around the time when they started making the crisp packets out of foil. They were simultaneous. They started filling the packet full of mostly air, and the packet was then made out of foil. Prior to that, it was just plastic. There was no like foil lining to the inside of the packet. So it was like a double marketing thing. Oh, they keep it fresher because of the foil lining. And yeah, all this extra air in there helps preserve the crisps. And what load of rubbish. All right, the box says, Texas barbecue Pringles are elite. I could easily box off a tube. I don't think I've had Texas barbecue Pringles, to be fair. Oh, yeah. I remember when they used to put money in Walker's crisps. That's right. Yep, you get a little sachet, and inside it, if you were lucky, would be a £5 note. Debyaka says, yet you like whispering aero, which is all air. Haha. Hey, if it tastes good, it tastes good. And they've always been air from the beginning. So, whereas with the crisps, it's like literally most of the packet is air. Whereas there was a time, it might have been somewhere in the mid-90s, early 90s, and prior, when crisp packets were bursting full of crisps. There was no air, there was hardly any air in them. Kylie says, I hardly eat junk food anymore, so all this talk is going to make me relapse. Same as me. I hardly eat junk food either anymore. That's why I'm talking about this stuff so much. Am I getting withdrawal? Let me tell you about an elite crisp, right, that not many of you will know about. Most of you know about Spar Shop. I think Spar Shop still exists. Does it? The Spar Shops, I'm pretty sure there are still some Spar Shops in London and whatnot. Don't know about the rest of the country. But during the 1990s, I want to say it was the 90s, Spar Shop did their own branded crisps, right? And get this, they did Neighbours crisps. You know the Australian soap, Neighbours, right? They did Neighbours crisps, which came in like a variety bag. And there was a Harold Bishop flavor Neighbours crisps. And I'm telling you, the Harold Bishops were the upper elite echelon of crisps that have ever existed. The Harold Bishops. What? And each pack obviously had a picture of Harold Bishop on the front. Oh my days. The Harold Bishops. AKA Jelly Belly. Not too many people know about it. Nobody in the comments has mentioned it. You don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah. You don't know what you're missing, or you don't know what you missed. The Neighbors crisps from Spar Shop. The Harold Bishop flavor. Oh my days. Big up Craig Welsh Boxer. That's right. Harold Bishop flavor crisps. Yeah, that's right. An esoteric crisp indeed. Do they still exist? I doubt it. I'm pretty sure they died off long time. Shout out to James Clifford for the super chat. He says, I'm going for Crawford's Galaxy Chocolate Smoothness over Canelo's Mexican beef this weekend, but the real cooking will be the judges' cards in Vegas. Big up James Clifford. Bars. So I guess he's picking Crawford, but he reckons there'll be some hometown cooking for Canelo and he'll get jobbed. Danny says, I've got some crisps here you've probably never had called Salt and Shake. You get your own. Do those still exist? No, I had those loads of times back in the days. Oh yeah, Salt and Shake been around since forever. I had Salt and Shake. It was always a weird concept though, right? Like salt and vinegar flavoring, which you open the little sachet inside and shake on yourself. I was like, what's that all about? Talk about pointless gimmicks. But no, I had Salt and Shake plenty of times. They've been around forever. I'm surprised they still exist. Kylie says, Spa gives me mad memories of being 14 in the 90s buying liters of cider. Cider and also 2020. They still make 2020, right? Cider 2020. And there was another one. 2020 and... They used to call it Mad Dog 2020. That's an American drink, actually. But there was another one that we used to drink. It was what, 2020 or so? I forget what it was called now. King says, have you ever eaten kidney? Yeah, I've eaten kidney. I don't mind kidney. It's all right to me. I don't mind it. Like kidney and steak and kidney pie. You know. I don't think I've ever eaten like a slab of kidney, but I've eaten kidney in things. Through the Storm, big up for the super chat. He says, is Boss a T10 pound for pound talent? Or Bud, I guess you meant to say, if he wins in style. Top 10. He's a top 10 pound for pound talent now. In my view, not that I'm really into pound for pound lists, but I don't know why he wouldn't be in a top 10 pound for pound ranking now. Would he be the number one? You could make an argument if he beats Canelo. It's a hell of an achievement, especially if he does it convincingly. And I have to imagine he would have to do it convincingly to get the nod. Debiaka says, have you ever eaten tripe Yeah, in Nigerian food. What do they call it? Shaki? That's what they call tripe, right? Shaki. Or is that the word for a particular organ? I'm not sure. Okay, Through the Storm says, of all time, I meant of all time. Yeah, I think he's in the conversation. All things considered, if he beats Canelo convincingly. It all really depends not just on the result, but the manner of the result. If he beats the brakes off Canelo and, beats him up, then yeah, that's really going to solidify his place in history. ABK Speaks says, yeah, it's called Shaki. All right, so tripe is Shaki, yeah. Yeah, I like the way Nigerians cook tripe. Yeah, in the red stew and all that. They make it all tasty. There's shaki in there. There's cow foot in there and other stuff in that red stew. Okay, someone says shaki is cow stomach. Yeah, it looks like a honeycomb. Yeah. But they tend to cook it with other bits of the cow, like the foot and all that in the stew there. It's nice. King says, hi Hatman, just curious if you remember the group Hijack from Brixton. They had a great album recorded under Ice-T's label in the late 80s called The Horns of Jericho. Yes, I do remember Hijack. I do indeed. That's right, Horns of Jericho, yeah. In fact, until you mentioned them just then, I probably hadn't thought of them for decades. But yeah, I do remember Hijack. I remember Hijack, Silver Bullet. These are like pre-London Posse groups. The London Posse, obviously, Rodney P and Bionic. Palm oil stew, okay. What do you call it? Ponmo. Through the Storm, big up, he says, I think Prime Bud 100% could beat Sugar Ray Leonard and Mayweather at 147. We'll know a lot more if he beats Canelo. Because I wouldn't argue with you that he could beat those guys, but those guys had more wins over marquee names. But this will be an opportunity is an opportunity for Bud Crawford to get his own win over a real big marquee name. And then if he manages to do that, there are going to be far more people that agree with you that he would beat Ray Leonard and Mayweather at 147. Okay, it's pronounced pommel. Okay. Jazz says Ghanaian food is better than Nigerian food. I've always preferred Nigerian jollof. That's all I can tell you. But I've had plenty of Ghanaian food as well. Really liked it. And loads of Nigerian food. I used to go to a Ghanaian restaurant on Streatham Common, or opposite Streatham Common, called Safari. I used to buy... I particularly used to get chofi from there. Chofi is turkey tail. I'm not sure what language that is, whether that's tree or some other Ghanaian language, which Ghanaian language it is. Because other Ghanaians might not know it as chofi. But yeah, I used to rinse the chofi from Safari in Streatham. Big up Mr. Luca for the super chat. He says, will Canelo retire if he loses in your opinion? No, because he'll have a rematch. As long as he doesn't get totally destroyed, there'll be a rematch if he loses. Big up through the storm, he says, Hatman, I'll be real. He KOs Canelo. He's pound for pound GOAT. I don't know about pound for pound of all-time GOAT. You know, it'll help his cause for sure. But I'm not sure I would want to go that far. But he'll be up there. Big up King for the super chat. There you go, yeah. King, 20 seconds to comply. Silver bullet. There you go. Old school UK rappers. Real old school. Chainsaw says, anyone got remedies for hair loss or thinning? I've been told black castor oil. Coconut oil? I think I read somewhere that helps hair growth, coconut oil, and just general health. Shave your head. There you go, Kyle. That's the ultimate solution. Shave your head. I mean, go bald gracefully. Shave it all off. Big up James Clifford for the super chat. He says, thoughts on the upcoming O2 heavyweight fight? Are you talking about Joseph Parker versus Fabio Wardley? Or, no, it's not Dave Allen versus Makhmudov. That's Doncaster, isn't it? Oh, no, Sheffield, excuse me. You're talking about Wardley against Parker. I think Parker absolutely boxes Wardley's head off. Big up Exactamundo, Rastafari. Yeah, I think Parker, Wardley is... God, is this a wild thing to say? I reckon it's a borderline mismatch. I think Parker is just so far above Wardley in terms of boxing skills. Will Wardley even get through it? He's a tough guy, but I just see Parker totally boxing his head off completely. Am I underestimating Wardley here? James Clifford says bad matchmaking. The thing is, there's nowhere else really for Wardley to go right now. Do you know what I mean? There's nowhere else for him to go. Because a shot against Usyk ain't forthcoming, and if he did fight Usyk, he'd get beat even worse than he would against Parker. So he's gonna have to wait forever to fight Usyk. So what else is he gonna do? They're presumably offering him millions to fight Joseph Parker. So what else is he gonna do? That's the problem. And Wardley is so limited that he could take a stay busy fight against a lesser name and still get beat. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a difficult situation for Fabio Wardley. I think he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, to be honest. Big up JR for the super chat. He says, is Mexican boxing suffering the same way as the US? That's a good question. Is Mexican boxing suffering in the same way as the US? The thing about Mexican boxing in my lifetime is that it's always acted as like a feeder system for American professional boxing. Do you know what I mean? It's like the talent is formed south of the border in Mexico, in those tough Mexican gyms and those tough, what will be the equivalent of small hall shows, right? In the UK, they call them small hall shows. Extremely competitive fights, week in, week out, all over Mexico. That's why you get these obscure Mexicans you've never heard of before come out of nowhere with 5 losses, and they beat the brakes off an upcoming British, former Olympian. Because the Mexico has got a very, very tough boxing scene with loads of talent. Them guys turn pro at 14, 15. And a lot of them don't have much of an amateur background. That's the way they do it there. So, Mexican boxing has always, in my lifetime, acted as like a feeder into American boxing. That's where the greatest Mexican talent ends up, in America. Is it suffering the way American boxing is? It's a different dynamic, I would say. So I don't think they're suffering as much, or I don't think it's changed as much, should I say, as American boxing has changed. I don't think Mexican boxing has changed as much. I think it was working as a feeder scene back in the days, and it's still doing that now. That's what I would say. Big up, JR. Very interesting question. Very interesting question. Through the Storm says, Hatman, if he KOs Canelo, he is easily Mount Rushmore pound for pound talent, surely. You can make an argument. I'll say that. Because it's all subjective at the end of it. Or it's somewhat subjective at the end of the day. It's somewhat subjective. But for me, he'll be up there. Because Canelo is a great fighter. He has the physical advantages. Natural body mass. He's used to fighting bigger guys and whatnot. He's actually younger than Bud Crawford. So when you weigh it all up, you say, well, if Crawford did a number on him and stopped him, yeah, you got to sit up and take note and give Bud his flowers and say, he's in the conversation. I'm not saying he would be definitively on a Mount Rushmore, but it'd be in the conversation for consideration on Mount Rushmore. I'll say that. But big up Through the Storm. Mr. Grandy says, Parker going to sleep. Okay. We've got somebody picking Wardley there. What happened to Elon Musk? Did he get beat? I'm not talking about the real Elon Musk. I'm talking about Mark Castro. I think he's lost at least one fight now, right? He was a Mexican talent coming through. Mark Castro, a.k.a. Eladio Musk. We're not going to call him Elon. We'll call him Eladio. The box says he lost and I haven't seen him since. Yeah, me neither. Has he only lost the once, or has it been a couple of times? Only says Don Eladio. Big up Adam for the super chat. It says Calzaghe and Froch versus Ben. I'll take Calzaghe over Ben. I'll take Ben over Froch. Shout out to Striker. Big up. And I'd say that Calzaghe would just be too fast. Throw too many punches for Ben. And Ben was always kind of vulnerable. Calzaghe can move, punch a lot. He had a good chin himself. So I'd say Calzaghe over Ben. But I reckon Ben beats Froch. If he can beat McClellan, I think he beats Froch. Big up Kieran Malcolm. Yeah, if we could all smash the like button. Danny says, how excited are you for Canelo versus Bud? I can't say I'm excited. I don't feel excited. I'm interested. It's an interesting fight to me. I can't say I'm like, super excited. It's just interesting. May the best man win. I know you're very excited, Danny. You love Canelo. I like both guys. I admire both of them in terms of skills and whatnot. But maybe I'm also suffering from what I spoke about earlier on, which is the fact that neither of these guys has been scintillating of late. Bud Crawford's fight against Madrimov, I thought he lost. Jumping up 2 weight divisions. Is he going to look any better? And Canelo against William Scott was one of the worst fights I've ever seen at championship level in my life. So coming off that, it's hard for me to feel excited. And I think maybe the majority of people are kind of feeling the same way. Kylie says Froch had an underrated jab. For me, McClellan's jab was much better than Froch's jab. Faster, harder, snappy. McClellan and Froch have some similarities. Similar height, long arms, but McClellan was a sharper puncher and, probably hit harder for one, but when I say sharper, I mean there was more snap on his shots than Froch. And he had a better chin than Froch too. Froch had a very good chin, but McClellan's chin was absolutely cast iron. And he only went down when he literally was bleeding on the brain. That's the only time he went down. So I'd take Nigel Benn over Froch. That Nigel Benn who fought McClellan that night, I think he beats Froch. Big up through the storm. He says, Hatman, if he schools Canelo and then goes down to 160, 154 and smacks up Boots Ennis, surely you got to have him as the undisputed. Bro, I'm circumspect when it comes to things like this. For one, I don't tend to do pound for pound lists, either current or historical pound for pound. I'm not really into them because there are too many variables. It's like when you're comparing pound for pound fighters, let's say you wanted to compare Bud Crawford to Alexander Usyk. Well, how do you compare them? Are you talking about who would win in a fantasy matchup? Well, if that's the case, how big do you make them both and why? Do you know what I mean? So I've never really been a big person for pound because it's such an abstract concept. So I don't have any issue with somebody putting Crawford up there if he schools Canelo, then smacks up Boots at 154, 160. I got no issue with it. But personally, myself, I don't really go for pound lists. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit too abstract for me. But trust me, if Terence Crawford wins this fight and he does it convincingly, you're definitely going to hear me in my videos singing Crawford's praises to high heaven. So if that's what you want to hear, you're going to hear that if Terence Crawford wins the fight convincingly. You're going to hear me praise him to high heaven, for sure. And if he, after that, then went down and beat the brakes off Boots Ennis, even more so. But yeah, I'm not really the biggest fan of pound for pound lists. If other people want to do them, that's cool. I'm not saying people shouldn't do them. But for me personally, it's like, in my head, how do I even compare a heavyweight on a pound for pound list to a welterweight? You know what I mean? It's like, it's so abstract. Danny says, will you give Canelo credit for winning, or can Bud only gain credit from this? Well, I think you kind of summed it up in your previous comment where you said Crawford hasn't fought any all-time great fighters. That's why he can't be considered. So if Canelo beats Crawford, he's beating a guy who, in your own words, never beat any pound-for-pound fighters. Never beat any great fighters. And he's a blown-up welterweight. So on that criteria, how much credit can we give Canelo? Do you know what I mean? If he's beating a Bud Crawford who's a blown-up welterweight, who hasn't beaten any pound-for-pound guys, like, yeah, it's, to answer your question in a short form, yeah, it's only Crawford that can really gain from this. And that's why Canelo was hesitant to take the fight in the first place. Because he's like, if I beat him, you beat a small guy. You're supposed to beat him. If I lose, oh my God, you lost to a small guy. So, yeah, that's why they had to pay Canelo an awful lot of money here, because pretty much the risk is all his in terms of legacy, Doesn't hurt. See, if Crawford loses, it doesn't hurt his legacy anywhere near as much as if Canelo loses. So the risk-reward, I'm not talking about financially, in terms of legacy, the risk-reward it favors Crawford far more than Canelo. Who the hell is this calling me? I don't know. I recognize this number. God knows. Spam call. Stop spamming me. Shout out to, I'm not talking to you, Warren Williams. I'm talking about somebody calling my phone. So, spam caller. Through the storm, big up. He says, Hatman Steve Kim recently said he's confident Bud would beat everyone, may even beat if he fought the same way version may. Okay, may beat everyone. I guess he meant say Mayweather beat if he fought the same versions Mayweather fought. Thoughts? I probably agree. But at the end of the day, Bud Crawford didn't fight those guys. So it's all opinion, it's all speculation. But I probably agree. I can't think of anyone Mayweather beat at the time when he beat them, the versions of them that he beat, that I'd picked to overcome Terence Crawford. So I'll probably agree with that. But we can't base greatness on our own subjective fantasy matchup picks. It has to be predominantly based on who they actually beat in the ring rather than who we think they could beat. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So, yeah, I would agree with it. But can't base his pound-for-pound status of all time on that. Shout out to Steve Pemberton for the super chat. Much appreciated. He says, evening. What for you are the pros and cons of being where you currently live compared to the UK? I'm still here, but trying to work out where is best to go. Well, it all comes down to your individual preferences, of course. But for me, I like the weather. I like the laid-back lifestyle. I like the wildlife. I like the food. The people are very friendly, calm, chilled out. I like that. I like compared to Britain and most of the West, more traditional culture. But I'll be leaving here very shortly, in a matter of weeks, and relocating to Africa. So I'll give you the lowdown about where I moved to also. Costa says, Hatman, I think True Geordie stole your live stream background music. Well, my live stream background music is all music from the YouTube audio library, so nobody can steal it because it belongs to YouTube. It's not mine. I'm sure that some of the music I use, I'm certain, is used by many other YouTubers because, again, it's all part of the YouTube audio library. I just picked songs out of the YouTube audio library that I thought sounded cool. And many other people will be using them as well. So that's no problem. Any of you who are looking to start a YouTube channel, utilize the YouTube audio library. It's all copyright-free music, you know? Crom says it's not true that Crawford always tries to take you out. He's a great finisher, but he always says he doesn't look for the KO. If it comes, he takes it. It is true because, see, what you've just said there is semantics. Mayweather would see an opportunity to go for the finish and he wouldn't take it. Crawford does take it. So that's what I mean by he always goes for the KO. When he sees an opportunity to knock you out, he's taking it. So what you're saying is just semantics. So what I'm saying is true. Crawford is a closer. Somehow, throughout the course of most of his fights, there will be an opportunity for him to try and take you out, and he's going to take it. Yeah, he didn't manage to do it against Madrimov, but he tried. One of the issues with a lot of African countries is that many of them are not really digital nomad friendly when it comes to the visas and stuff like that. A few of them are, but I want to say a lot of them are not. Not really digital. No, they don't have visas that cater to digital nomads, a lot of them. And so you have to find workarounds, you know. The countries, for anyone who is interested, who is a digital nomad, wants to go to Africa and go through a relatively easy visa process. Kenya has a digital nomad visa. Mauritius has Mauritius's digital nomad visa is probably the best one that I'm aware of in Africa. It has a very low burden of qualification. That's a good way to describe it. So you don't need to earn much to get Mauritius's digital nomad. I think you only need to earn about $1,500 in US dollars a month. Is that even minimum wage? It's something like that in Mauritius. Their visa's like $1,500 US dollars per month is the minimum you need to earn to qualify for their digital nomad visa. And I think it's a 2-year visa, which can be renewed. So the Mauritius one is very, very good, right? Their digital nomad visa. Kenya's has a higher earning threshold. You have to earn more, maybe double that. And I think it only lasts a year, but they do have a specific like digital nomad visa as well in Kenya. South Africa, I think, have just introduced one. I'm not sure if it's active yet, but I know they were bringing one in. As far as the cons, Stephen Pemberton, where I currently am, the cons would be rainy season, which lasts damn near half of the year. The cons would be mosquitoes. Now, you do end up getting used to the mosquitoes. Like, you get used to their, saliva or whatever. When I first came here, I was getting toe up from the flow up. I mean, mosquitoes just destroyed me when I first came here. But now I guess I'm used to their... I still get bites and bumps here and there, but it's not as bad as it was when I first came here. I still don't like the mosquitoes. Obviously, the infrastructure is not what you're used to in the West. And the law here, if you're trying to do anything by way of business, is very, very alien to anyone who's coming from Britain or America. Because in Britain and America, throughout the Anglosphere, basically, you're dealing with a version of British common law. Even American law is like a version of, is based upon British common law. Whereas here, it's based on like Roman law, Latin law, whatever they call it. And it's very, very different the way that things work. Very, very different. So doing anything by way of business, property, acquisition, ownership is just, very alien and very complicated compared to what you're used to in the Anglosphere. Corruption, well, corruption, you're going to get rinsed for money no matter what country you're in, one way or the other. In fact, one of the only places I've lived where I didn't get rinsed for money was in the Middle East. They don't rinse you for money. There's no income tax. There's no police trying to squeeze you. No. In the Middle East, that's the only place I've lived where they didn't try to rinse you for money. But in London, oh my God. London councils have got to be among the most corrupt, I want to say, in the world when it comes to thinking up dirty, devious ways to separate you from your hard-earned money. Good God, man. London councils are so foul. So even though there isn't police pulling you over for dubious reasons and squeezing you for money like there is the way there is here in Latin America, they just do that through local councils in a place like London with cameras and all sorts of dubious traffic laws and what have you, and council tax and all this stuff, which you don't have to pay where I am. See what I mean? So one way or another, you're going to get fleeced, whether it's by a policeman called Pedro, who claims you were speeding when you actually weren't, who wants $20 off you, whether it's some bastard in your local borough council. One way or another, you're going to get shafted. Pause. Big up through the storm, he says. Kim also said Bud likely would have badly hurt Prime Pac-Man. Would never need 2 chances to really beat Maidana. Thoughts? He said Bud is the 140 GOAT. Again, it's all fair speculation. Do I agree? As Danny said earlier on, Bud is easier to hit than Mayweather, full stop. But because he's more offensive minded, he also makes himself more easy to hit. So it's a different kind of fight, I think, than the Mayweather fight was, which was just a boring snooze fest. Would he have really hurt Pac-Man? Maybe. Wouldn't have taken 2 chances to beat Maidana. I think Maidana would have been a rough night's work for Bud, to be honest. I think it would have been a rough night's work for him. I think Bud would win, but I don't think that'll be a walk in the park. I don't think so. Maidana's very strong, heavy hands. Even though he was unorthodox, he was deceptively skilled as a pressure fighter. The way he would set the shots up, and we all saw against Adrian Broner, you know, when he faked like he was going to jab to the body, then he came up, he turned that jab to the body to a left hook to the head. Big up Galaxy Edits. Long time foundation, big up. So I think that's a rough fight for Crawford, to be honest. Maidana's a tough hombre. Wow. Tommy says, there's a new council tax for gardening bins. See, that's how they get you in the UK. With all the official, supposedly above board stuff. It's just extortion, bro. And in Latin America, having to grease the palms of the occasional dodgy traffic cop, I'm telling you, is a lot cheaper than dealing with the damn borough councils in London. It's a lot cheaper. At least if you're making Western salary, right? But then again, when the local cops do squeeze local people, they don't charge them as much as they charge a gringo. As soon as they hear that you don't have you're not speaking in Spanish, they're charging you more. That's a good point Danny made there. He says, Madrimov showed that Crawford struggles with fighters who punch off their movement. Pac-Man was a legend at that. And his back left hand would have landed all night long. Would have been a good fight, though. What I would say, though, is Pac-Man wasn't as defensively good, in my opinion, as Madrimov. Pac-Man was so offensive-minded, so he was good with the in-and-out movement, but he wasn't as consistent. See, the thing that makes Madrimov so awkward is that he'll play the waiting game with you. Yeah? A lot of them old Eastern Bloc guys are like that. They'll bounce in and out of range, and they don't care if rounds and rounds are going by without them getting an opportunity to land a straight right hand, because they're negating your offense during the same period. So they'll wait all night with you, bouncing in and out of range. Do you know what I mean? To see whose concentration breaks first. Pacquiao wasn't like that. You know, Pacquiao's not bouncing in and out of range the whole night, avoiding your shots and then just waiting for one. No, he's not. He's taking more chances. He was a bit more reckless. So, yeah, he did have good in and out movement, but not quite like Madrimov's in and out movement. Not quite like that. But I do think there'll be an interesting fight between Patman and Bud. Why is this graphic on screen? Did I? Oh, okay. There we go. Let me refresh my tab here. Seems to be stuck. Dastardly Firefox. Effing me over like a borough council. There we go. Samil says, Hammer, what was life like in the UK in the 80s with limited internet? There was no internet in the 80s, bro. no limited internet. Zero. If anyone had internet in the 80s, they must have been working for some deep government organization. There was maybe like the precursor to the internet existed in the 80s, but unless you were like working some deep computer engineering or government or military or something, nobody had it. So for all intents and purposes, for the average rank and file citizen, internet did not exist in the 1980s. There was no internet. And in the pre-internet world, it was very different. But I have fond memories of it. In many ways, it was better. Social interaction was better. Pre-internet. Because obviously before the internet, the only way to have social interaction was in person. There was no other way. You know what I mean? That's it. So, okay, another call here now. This ain't a spam call. I do know who this is. This is one of my potentials in Africa. Now's not the time to be calling me, though. Craig Welsh Boxer says, internet in the 80s was called CFAX. There you go. CFAX and teletext. Thunderbird. That was the drink I was thinking about earlier on. I think that was the drink I was thinking about earlier on. What was the Thunderbird? Was some kind of alcoholic drink, wasn't it? There was 2020. There was Thunderbird. What kind of drink was Thunderbird? Oh, wow. Steve Pemberton says, strange coincidence. Donnie Lalonde lives in Costa Rica, and he's definitely one of the Wide Awake Club. Is that right? I never realized Donnie Lalonde lived there. I know David Hay lives here. But Donnie Lalonde? Wow, I never realized he lived there. Joe says, man said one of my potentials. That's right. One of the hopefuls. And I told this one that she has to agree to polygamy. She didn't like it at first, but then she told me that her granddad had like 5 or 6 wives. I was like, there you go, you got it in your family. So, keeping it in the culture. She's come around to it. I said, if you want to partake in the selection process of the second and third one, and go to your village. She's from the city, but she's got family in the village. Thunderbird was a wine, okay, like a tonic wine. Is that what it was, or just a normal wine? Carly says, you ever run into Hay and his 2 girlfriends? I haven't, but he does live in Guanacaste, the same region, a little bit further south, as I understand it. I don't think David Hay frequents the kind of places I frequent. He's several tax brackets above. Samil says, am I moving like Dr. Umar? Definitely not like Dr. Umar, bro. That guy's something else. Through the storm, I know what you mean. Dr. Umar's talking about his 2 queens, and he's going to get a light-skinned queen and a dark-skinned queen because he's not... whatever. That guy's a meme. Through the storm, big up for the super chat. It says, do you agree that Aleem Kanuli is 100 times tougher fight than Canelo, or any 168 if Bud beat Canelo? Aleem Kanuli, is that the best 2-win streak ever for you? It's hard to know how good Aleem Kanuli is. He seems good, but then there's that fight he had with Denzel Bentley where he looked really average. So, I don't know. Aleem Kanuli is suffering from a lack of quality opposition in the middleweight division. That's the problem. Not his fault, but he is suffering. So we don't really know how good he is. We don't really know how good Aleem Kanuli is. But from a stylistic perspective, is that a tougher fight for Bud? When Aleem Kanuli's really on it, it might be. But again, you look at that Denzel Bentley fight, and Bentley's not the biggest middleweight in the world. I don't think he did anything that Bud Crawford couldn't do, So I'm not sure about that one. So, I wouldn't agree that Aleem Kanuli is 100 times tougher fight than Canelo. No, I wouldn't agree with that. But it's a different style, southpaw. And we just don't know how good Aleem Kanuli is. We just don't know how good he is. On the eye test, he seems good, but again, the opposition for him has been so poor. it's hard to gauge through no fault of his own. Big up Action Popcast. Crazy Pickney, big up. Rusby says Afro Introductions website. No, in most African countries, you use TikTok. There's a pro tip there. You're trying to holler at girls in Africa, get on TikTok. Most of them use TikTok. Not that many of them use Instagram. So, TikTok. For whatever reason. Maybe it's the Chinese. You know, the Chinese have got massive influence in Africa now. Maybe that's why. Because you'll find that not many of them are on Instagram. It's all TikTok. TikTok and Facebook. I don't do Facebook. As far as Afro introductions, I think I might have heard of that, but I can't imagine anybody's using that in Africa. You know, that's for the diaspora. Yeah, Tinder's there, but you have to sort through a lot of brasses. Because you're finding, not just in Africa, but even here, right? In Latin America, when you go on Tinder, it's just like brass central. You know, like a massive number. They're not all brasses on there, but an awful lot of brasses use Tinder in developing countries. So to bypass the brasses, I mean, you can sift through Tinder and you will find, you know, a fair few of them that are not brasses, but if you don't want to have to deal with brasses at all, sifting through brasses, just go on TikTok. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, well gone, Hatman. Where do you rank Crawford if he KOs Canelo? If you're talking about right now, as I said earlier on, I'm not really a big pound-for-pound list guy. But I wouldn't argue with anyone who put him number one or number two pound-for-pound right now if he KO'd Canelo, or just beat Canelo convincingly either way. In terms of all-time, again, I'm not a big pound-for-pound guy all-time, but he'd certainly go down as one of the greatest fighters if he KOs Canelo of the past 30 years, at a minimum. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. Big up D-Man every time. Big up Through the Storm. He says, last final question. Do you agree with McGuigan recently saying if Loma turned pro at 21, 22 and progressed normally, he would have become the GOAT of the sport? It's a big assumption. I don't know whether he would have been the GOAT of the sport. Because Lomachenko, when his skill wasn't enough to overcome physical disadvantages, he didn't have the level of dog in him that his countryman and former stablemate Alexander Usyk showed. So I don't know whether I would agree with that. Yeah. When he fought Teofimo Lopez, he was intimidated in the first half of the fight by Lopez's power in the right hand. He was. And that's why he was on the outside for that long. Rounds were going by. He was falling behind on the scorecards, doing nothing about it. Yeah? Because he was intimidated by the backhand. When Teo started slowing down, and when that backhand started losing its potency, that's when you saw Lomachenko come forward and start being aggressive. Normally, he'd be doing that from round one. Usyk has never allowed himself to get frozen on the outside. Do you know what I mean? Afraid to force the issue against the bigger guy. And if you're talking about pound for pound, Lomachenko would have been always competing with his countryman Usyk. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't agree with that. He would have achieved more, I'm sure, Lomachenko, if he turned pro at 21, 22. But I think that aspect of his game, that chink in his armor, was always going to be there, irrespective of what age he turned pro, in my opinion. So, yeah, I don't think he would have been the GOAT or anything like that, but he would have achieved more for sure. He would have achieved more. Shout out to Through the Storm. Much appreciated, sir. Big up Andrew Morris for the super chat. He says, cheers for your boxing content and cheers for your support. Big up. Steve Pemberton says, I remember getting wrecked on it when I was about 15. You talking about Thunderbird? Yeah, there was Thunderbird. There was 2020. And I feel like there was one more that I can't remember. What's the other one that I can't remember? It wasn't Alizé, because Alizé came late. Alizé is an American import. There was another one. Well, 2020 is an American import too. But there was another one which came in different color bottles. I know 2020 came in different flavors, right? But no, there was another one. I don't think it was Thunder. There was something else that came in colorful bottles, and this would have been early 90s or something. Early mid 90s. No, not Cisco. No. Something else. Steve Pemberton says, actually Google Thunderbird, sweet fortified wine. So I stand corrected from what I recall tasted like cider. Ruz B says there's millions of girls using Afro introductions in Africa. I used it, video called. It's legit, but lots of brasses or girls expecting you to send them money on normal girls though. Okay, I'm surprised. Warren Williams says, why always these people drinking at 15? My parents gave me the odd drink maybe. On a Sunday, I never started drinking proper until 2009. Well, are you from a Caribbean background? Because, yeah, growing up in South London, a lot of parents used to drink. We were roaming the streets, teenagers and whatnot, drinking. It just was what it was, you know. It was the environment and the culture of that environment at the time. It was something to do. It seemed exciting. Hooch, I remember when Hooch came out. Hooch wasn't the thing I was thinking of. No, the fight week workouts will not change my view, Danny. These guys are both far too seasoned for it to change my view. You know, these are absolute veterans of the game, consummate professionals. Neither of these guys cuts corners. No, it won't change my view unless someone's got an injury or something that seems as though they have an injury. Then I don't see it changing my view. Big up Action Popcast. He says, MD 2020 was rough booze. And MD, yeah, because it used to be referred to as Mad Dog, But I don't think MD actually stands for Mad Dog. I think that's just something that, people assumed, or, they came up with Mad Dog for those initials, but I don't think it actually stands for Mad Dog at all. But that's what people used to call it, Mad Dog 2020. Nah, it's not St. Ides. It's not St. Ides. There was no St. I've never seen St. Ides in the UK. Do people still drink St. Ides in the United States now? I can't imagine people still drink that in the States. That's a 90s drink. What was the other one? St. Ides, and what was the other 40 ounce that people used to drink in America? There was two kinds. There was St. Ides and there was another one. Old English. Yes, there you go. Old English. Old English. That's right. It was St. Ides and Old English. They were the 40 ounces that people used to drink back in the days, in the 90s. OE. That's right. Old English. Private stock. St. Ides. Yeah. People don't drink that stuff now, right? I'm sure people don't drink St. Ides. If St. Ides still in business, maybe on Skid Row. I mean, like, those drinks can't be as popular as they used to be. I'm sure they're not. OE and St. Ides. Chainsaw says Old English is still around. But do people drink it though? Or is it just, winos and people on Skid Row? Big up D-Man, he says, when you go to Africa in a few weeks, will it be your first time? Be interesting to get a podcast down the line on your thoughts. No, it won't be my first time. But it'll be my first time living for an extended period. And you absolutely will get my thoughts down the line. So hold tight for that. That's coming. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. Oh, wow. Malik says, in NY, they still sell OE and SI rapidly. For real? I thought the OE and SI died when Timberlands, oversized jeans, lumberjack coats and all that kind of stuff. When all of that went out of fashion, I thought St. Ides and OE died with it. Timberlands with the laces untied, of course. I will not reveal exactly which country it is. But there will be clues. There will be clues. But yeah, it's a done deal. Ticket is booked. Arrangements are made. Valentine's. Oh, yeah. That's another old school drink in the United States. That's right. D-Man says, will you miss Costa Rica? I hope I don't miss it too much, but I definitely will miss some things, I'm sure, about Costa Rica, because one of the things I can say about Costa Rica is that the internet is pretty damn good here. The internet in Costa Rica is good. Generally, the download speeds are not what you would get in Britain, but upload, for whatever reason, is really good. You know, so it's not uncommon at all in Costa Rica to get like 100 up, 100 down. So the download speed, 100 megabytes a second download speed, is not amazing, it's decent. But 100 megabytes per second upload, that's very good. That's like, you know, Western standard upload. And as a content creator, you're far more concerned about upload speeds than download speeds. Upload speeds are important for streaming and uploading videos, obviously. So, yeah, Costa Rica upload speeds are very good. I'm hoping I don't miss that too much, you know what I mean? So I do like Costa Rica. The internet in Costa Rica pretty good. Costa Rica is quite digital. In fact, Costa Rica is very digital nomad friendly. Let me just put that out there. Yeah. Costa Rica is very, very friendly for digital nomads. This is another thing they don't have in most African countries is you can't live on a perpetual tourist visa. I've met people in Costa Rica, been living here for 20 years plus on a tourist visa. Can you imagine? 20 years. This man been living here 15, 20 years on a perpetual tourist visa. The Costa Rican government don't care. How's that for digital nomad friendly? And they do have a digital nomad visa as well. In Costa Rica, by the way. They introduced it a couple of years ago. So they have a digital nomad visa, but it's barely even worth, unless you want a Costa Rican bank account, it's barely even worth getting it because you just live on a perpetual tourist visa, which they extended to 6 months now. When I first got here, it was 3 months. Yeah, you had to leave the country, cross the border every 3 months and then come back on the same day. Do you know what I mean? Then they extended it to 6 months. So it's like, yeah, it's very, very digital nomad friendly. Good internet. If you live in one of the gringo areas, very safe. Nice weather. Loads of other digital nomads. It's very, very digital nomad friendly. Very, very friendly. The shout out to Danny, he says, have you seen Ocho Rios and Montego Bay in Jamaica? I've never been to Ocho or Montego Bay. No, I've never been to those places. I had a manager when I was working a security job back in the day, a Jamaican guy who there was a girl there actually. It was a Trini girl. There was me, a Nigerian guy who I'm still friends with now, a Trini girl. And the Jamaican manager who used to, he was from a family of bakers. So around Christmas time, he would bring in rum cake for us to eat, which took him several months to make. That's how deep this guy was. That's how deep him and his family were in the baking game. His prep for this rum cake would take months, bro. Like soaking the dried fruits or whatever they were in rum and wine, and he talked us through this whole process of how I made these rum cakes. And to this day, like Deontay Wilder, that's the best rum cake I've ever had in my life, bro. And that rum cake was so potent. When he brought it in the office, we were all sitting down in the security office, and he brought this rum cake out, and you could smell it before he even took the wrapping off. The rum smell was so strong, yeah? But when you tasted it, it was sweet. The alcohol taste didn't overpower you. It was more the smell. It smelled so strongly of rum. And I only had like one slice of this cake. And I used to drink alcohol back then. When I got up from my seat, I'm not even going to lie, I was a little shaky. I was a little unstable in the security office from that rum cake. But anyway, long story short, he had a place uptown in Kingston, which he allowed us, me, the Trini girl, and my Nigerian friend, to stay at in Jamaica. He was a very cool guy, that manager. I'm not going to drop his name. In fact, the last I heard of him, I'm not even sure if he's still around, to be fair. I should ask my Nigerian friend, because he told me that he had cancer. That might have been a year ago. Lucan says he knows the country I'm relocating to. Are you okay with me naming it on the chat? Well, you couldn't possibly know it because I never mentioned it. So you can name any country you like. I've never actually named the country that I'm relocating to. So name whatever country you wish. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, I see Moses Atama driving Bentleys shopping Gucci on Insta. Hope he doesn't lose focus early on. And that will be the battle right there. Because of all the adulation he's getting right now. From many people, including myself. Will it go to his head? People compare him to a young Mike Tyson. Stylistically very different. But in terms of being a prodigy, right? It went to Mike Tyson's head. Obviously, he achieved a lot before he fell off the horse, and Itama would be doing fantastically well if he achieved half of what Mike Tyson did. But yeah, ultimately Mike Tyson succumbed to having all that fame and money and adulation at a very young age when he really wasn't mentally or emotionally mature enough to be able to deal with it. People guessing. The country I'm going to? Okay. I can tell you which countries it definitely ain't going to be. Definitely ain't going to be Nigeria. Definitely not Nigeria. Hell no. What I can say, Danny, right, is that I do like obscurity. I do like living in obscure places, especially at this stage of my life. That I will give you. Yeah, I do like going to the places where other people generally don't go. Yeah. The obscure places, not the obvious places. I'll give you that. So Danny knows me well enough to know that bit. But yeah, to D-Man's point, the Tama's going to have to be careful. And that's going to be as big a battle as the battles he has in the ring or the battles he has outside of the ring with his ego and so on and so forth. Yeah. D-Man says, yeah, I think it happened to Anthony Joshua, to be honest. He got too rich too early. I don't know whether it was the money that got to AJ. I think it was more the pressure from the fans. Just my opinion. Danny says, you like places with a beach or at least a lake. I don't think Lesotho even has a pond. I'm sure they have ponds. Lesotho or Lesotho. I've heard people pronounce it both ways, Lesotho or Lesotho. Lineal Ngannou says, why not Nigeria? Is that a trick question? Who moves to Nigeria, bro? Not being funny. Who the hell moves to Nigeria? Even Nigerians don't move to Nigeria. Big up Steve Pemberton. He says, Tony Blair, Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, Sadiq Khan, etc. are all people who trigger me. As you can sense, they're pure evil. However, I have to say Carl Froch irritates me tremendously. Damn, I wouldn't put Carl Froch in the same category as the others you mentioned. I mean, he might irritate you, but yeah, pure evil for the others. Froch is a troll. Yeah, Froch is a troll. The others are like dangerous, you know. The others are straight up dangerous. Does anyone else find him irritating? He can be irritating, and I get it. He can be irritating. But sometimes I just have to laugh. I can't lie. I do have to laugh sometimes. Big up Steve Pemberton. Yeah, that's the Hall of Shame, isn't it? Never mind Hall of Fame, Hall of Shame with the likes of Blair, Trudeau, Ardern, Sadiq Khan. Carl the Cobra Frock eating his apple at ringside while Darren Till lunges after him. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, as soon as you land in Lagos, they try to extort you. Yeah, I can't see myself, unless there's a very, very good reason, business or something, ever going to Nigeria. Nigeria is dangerous, you know? There's a reason that tourism in West Africa, in fact, let me rephrase it. There's a reason that Ghana, which is right next door to Nigeria, is far more known for tourism than Nigeria is. Because Ghana is way safer. It's more tourist friendly. And they're in fact, even though AJ is of Nigerian lineage, they're talking about him fighting in Ghana. Imagine that. AJ fights in Africa for the first time, and it might end up being in Ghana rather than Nigeria, where his ancestral roots are. Then he says, Hatman might revert and go to Sudan. I don't know about that, bro. Sudan is a hot mess right now. So I'd like to go Sudan, but now is not the time. I mean, Ghana, as I understand it, is quite expensive now. It's obviously a relatively small country. And because there have been so many Westerners, particularly from the black diaspora, moving to Ghana over the past few decades, it's become quite expensive in Ghana. I mean, expensive by African standards, you know? It's quite expensive. In fact, Senegal, as I understand it, is quite expensive as well. You got that bougie French thing going on in Senegal. Trying to come with expensive prices with their French vibe. Ali says, Northern Sudan is beautiful with lots of ancient ruins, and that's what I'd like to visit, but unfortunately, it is extremely dangerous right now. Extremely dangerous in the northern part of Sudan, sadly. Andrew Morris says John Fisher was on Newsnight. Are you talking about Big John Fisher? Why was he on Newsnight? Has he broken the world record for the most spring rolls in one sitting? Is that what it is? Dog Boone says, is Africa more dangerous than South America? No. Not overall, no. There are certain countries in Africa that are on par with South America, but overall, nah. I'd say South America's more dangerous overall. But South Africa's up there with most South American countries in terms of danger. Nigeria's up there too. But most of the countries in Africa, nah, they're not. Because in a lot of countries in South America, guns are everywhere. Whereas in most African countries, guns are quite scarce. Big up Steve Pemberton. He says, I'm not comparing on evil stakes. He's talking about Frotche. He just winds me up and triggers me. Just makes me cringe if I hear Hall of Fame, 80,000, three-time world champion. Yeah, I get it. He's repeating the same jokes, if you want to call them that, or type of trolling over and over again. Samil says the internet in Africa isn't the best. Yeah. In some countries, it can be pretty good. As I understand it, in places like Kenya, you can get good internet in Kenya. South Africa, you can get good internet. I think even in Mauritius, you can get decent internet. I've never been to Mauritius, but I'm following some people who live there, and they say they can get decent internet there. I agree with Craig. Frotch was more annoying when he was fighting. I agree with that. D-Man says Kenya and Rwanda have great internet. Yeah, I can imagine Rwanda as well, because it's very developed. Kenya, I already knew. There's a lot of Westerners living in Kenya, both from the black diaspora and, indigenous Europeans and whatnot living in Kenya. A lot of Indians there, of course. So Kenya's ahead of a lot of Africa when it comes to like infrastructure, internet, stuff like that. But Kenya's a bit too obvious for me. I'm not saying I would never go there or never consider relocating there, because at the end of the day, they do have a digital nomad visa, which is somewhat appealing to me in Kenya. They do have that going for them. And Circle says, out of 152 ranked countries, Kenya is 140th. They do not have good internet. I would be very, very careful about believing these rankings online, okay? It's similar to the debate that I had with somebody regarding healthcare in the United States, because they said that America ranks lowest in healthcare out of all the Western countries or whatever. Obviously in Kenya, there are going to be vast swathes of the country that have no internet at all, or the worst dial-up you could imagine. But if you are coming from the West and you're living in a nice area of Nairobi, trust me, they have very good internet. Yeah? So you have to understand the context within which these lists are made. This ranking thing is not going to be relevant to you if you are a Westerner living in a nice area of Nairobi. You're going to have good internet. You see what I'm saying? And the same goes for Costa Rica, by the way. There are plenty of parts of Costa Rica where the internet's terrible. If you're living in a gringo area, trust me, the internet's good. Whereas there are other parts of Africa where the internet is rubbish everywhere, even in the gringo areas. Well, I'm using Spanish terms. Even in the, the areas full of Westerners and whatever, the internet's still rubbish. Whereas in Kenya, no, you can get very good internet in Kenya. I know that for a fact. So all of them lists and all that stuff, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. Going back to the healthcare debate I had with somebody a few weeks ago, if you're somebody like on a middle income type salary, let's say you earn, I don't know, 60 grand a year, US dollars, 70 grand a year, US dollars. It is absolutely possible to move to various places in the United States and have private healthcare, which is not only cheaper than what you pay for the NHS, but better. And this guy that I was debating with couldn't wrap his head around that concept. He just kept talking about these lists. Oh, on the list, America ranks below Britain in health. I'm like, that's because there is vast disparity in America between different communities and what have you in terms of healthcare. I'm talking about like an average earner, somebody who's in the middle, I don't know, 60, 70 grand. It's easy for somebody like that to move somewhere in the United States and get better healthcare for cheaper than they would pay the NHS. That's the point I was making to the guy. Somehow I couldn't get it because he kept reverting back to these lists. I'm like, do you know how the statistics in these lists are made up? Like, anyway. You got no idea where Costa Rica would rate on I haven't even looked at the internet list. All I can tell you is from my experience, when you live in the gringo areas, good internet is quite easy to come by. For me, 100 megabytes a second upload is more than good enough for anything I'm going to need it for. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, my dad goes to Thailand to see specialists. From coming from New Zealand, he said, they have way better healthcare facilities and way cheaper. And that's another thing. Healthcare is also very good in Costa Rica. Dental care and stuff like that. Yeah, lots of people come from America. You know the way that people go from Britain to Turkey to get their teeth done? People come to Costa Rica for various, sometimes cosmetic procedures and other like more serious medical procedures to get it done more cheaply. Circle says Costa Rica's 47th, UK is 42. Okay. But like I said, I wouldn't really pay too much attention to those lists because it's, how have they derived all that data? And will it be relevant to a Westerner who's do you know what I mean? Moving to one of these places? You're not going to be living where the average Costa Rican lives. You're not going to be living in some Tico town, for most people anyway. Because I'm sure you can go to plenty of Tico towns where the internet is awful, where they probably don't even supply the good internet there, But in Guanacaste, in Gringoville, it's good. Mark Odell says top quality funeral directors in Johannesburg. Okay. And in Cape Town as well, and Durban. All right, peeps, I'm going to wrap this one up. In Circle says, are there any truly safe SA countries? I guess you mean Southern African countries or South American countries? We should distinguish between South America and Central America. And actually, a Latino once told me this, I didn't realize at the time, that Mexico is actually in North America. It's part of the North American continent. So we should distinguish. Costa Rica is relatively safe. Costa Rica is in Central America. And there are various places in South America which also are relatively safe. If Khabib mentioned Uruguay there. Indeed, that's known to be a relatively safe place. Chile. Anyway, going to shut this one down. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Danny, Matt Borgerson, Supersized Fries, K Singh, James Wood, Swaggins, Sean Gallagher, Kieran Malcolm, Paul McAllister, Michael Thompson, Suited and Booted, Gaz, James Clifford, Cash, Adam, Through the Storm, Mr. Luca, King, JR, Stephen Pemberton, D-Man, Andrew Morris, Action Popcast, excuse me. I think that's everyone. So yeah, special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. Big up everybody else. Until next time, take care, be good. And of course, I'll be live streaming for the big fight on Saturday. And I'm sure I'll do a couple of streams before then, or video uploads if not streams. So stay tuned. If everyone could do me the courtesy of just sticking a like on this stream on the way out, it'd be much appreciated. Yeah, until next time, take care, be good. Catch you on the other side. I'm out.